Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on a wooden door. No answer came. Creak. The door opened slowly, and an immaculately dressed person stepped in. It was a man with white hair, but it was a bit difficult to discern his age. Even though he had white hair, which obviously came from old age, there were no wrinkles on his face. If one only looked at his face, one might believe that he was rather young. However, appearances often deceived. If someone heard of this person's age, they wouldn't be able to believe whoever told them. The man looked around the room with professional eyes. It was a small study filled with all kinds of books, scriptures, tomes, and papers. An unbelievably soft violet carpet was strewn across the ground, and a cozy fire crackled in the fireplace. The man's eyes looked at the back of the room. Another man was sitting on a chair behind a mahogany desk. Several papers were strewn across the desk, and the man practically lay in his chair, his head looking upward. The man at the door slightly shook his head and walked over. Bang! He slightly kicked the table. Oh, waha! Oh, good morning, Wester, the man who had just been sleeping said after recovering from the shock. He was an old man with gentle facial features, and everyone that saw him would believe him to be a nice grandpa. It's evening, Sir Wester, the butler said to the old man. Oh, already? The old man asked in confusion as he looked around his room. I was working on this year's reward for the clan tournament. Guess I lost track of time, he said. Wester uttered, deciding not to comment on how he had found his master napping. What? You don't believe me? The old man asked with an offended expression. Look, it's over there, he said. A tome started to float from the desk and stopped in front of Wester. Wester took the tome, opened it, and scanned through it. An element-neutral king rank spell, Wester commented. You didn't read the dossiers about the candidates, did you? Wester asked. The old man felt like he had been found out. Bang! Wester put his hands on the stacked dossiers on the table, making it impossible for the old man to peek at them. The old man groaned. Fine, fine. He groaned, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Element-neutral spells are worth more than element-specific spells anyway. Sir, if you keep creating element-neutral spells for every tournament, the other clans will start believing that we don't care about the tournament, Wester commented. The old man groaned again. Fine. I'll just create one for every element, and you can choose whichever you want to hand out in the future tournaments. Wester put the element-neutral king rank spell under his arm, but didn't comment on the old man's words. Silence. The old man felt a bit awkward as his butler only stood before him, not saying anything. Do you need something else? The old man asked. Silence. The child of calamity has vanished, Wester said. The old man was a bit taken aback as he looked at Wester with skepticism. Vanished? Did he flee? Why would he? He had money, freedom, status, a family, everything. What happened? We don't know, Wester said. When our people arrived at his home for their monthly visit, he was simply gone. Did you search for him? The old man asked. Of course, sir, Wester answered. I sent the 7th Legion to search through every particle of the surrounding 50,000 kilometers. As a mere apprentice, he couldn't possibly have traveled further, and we would have noticed any spatial fluctuations. However, we still couldn't find him. The old man scratched his chin and thought. Not even the other clans could have hidden something like that. Additionally, they would only be shooting a fireball in their own faces by taking him away. I'm certain that he hadn't had any help. That only means that his affinity has claimed his own life. That would also explain why you can't find a trace of him, the old man muttered. Wester nodded. That is also our assumption. The old man also nodded. I presume you need the seal? He asked. Yes, sir. The old man gestured with his hand for Wester to give him something, and a piece of paper appeared in the air, which then floated to the desk. The old man looked at the paper and read it. Then he put his finger at the bottom of the piece of paper, and his finger shone with purple lightning for an instant. As always, the old man commented as the paper flew back to Wester. As always, Wester said. Wester turned around, left the study, and wished the old man a good evening. After Wester left, the old man looked with furrowed brows at the middle of the room. The old man waved his fingers. Some water gathered in the air, and a clear pool formed. The old man looked into the pool, and the pool reflected a seemingly infinite world. The old man's eyes moved with rapid speeds as he scanned through every hidden corner of the world in the pool. 10 seconds later, the pool vanished, and the old man laid back on the chair. Sure enough, he's gone. No trace of him. That's a new one, the old man mumbled to himself. I mean, affinities can eat up their owners, so it's not really unbelievable. It just hasn't happened with the child of calamity before in the past 100,000 years. This smells fishy. Something's different this time. The old man scratched his chin for a while longer, but then he put his head back in a sleeping position. Well, doesn't matter. The legions will find the new child of calamity anyway, he commented to himself as he closed his eyes. Meanwhile, Wester was walking through a dimly lit hallway made of stone. Every step he took seemingly pulled him forward for hundreds of meters. It was difficult to discern what was more surprising, the fact that Wester was moving this quickly or the fact that the hallway was so long. After some seconds, Wester arrived in front of a wooden door, which he quickly opened and walked out of. Wester arrived in a grand hall. The hall was 2 kilometers long and 300 meters high. Powerful weapons and adornments were on the walls as imposing. Violet flags hung down from every column. The flags had white lightning bolts imprinted on them, and a gigantic table was in the middle of the hall with some chairs surrounding it. Right now, the hall was empty. Wester went through another door and down another hallway, this hallway being far bigger and grander than the previous one. Wester walked through another door. This room had several tables and chairs. Many different kinds of magical equipment could be found in the room. Several papers and different objects were on the desks. Good evening, sir. Do you require something? A blonde woman with ostentatious purple robes stood up politely. Electricity sparked around her as space seemed to bend around her. She exuded incredible power. Oh, Sarah, perfect. I was searching for you. Everything going well? Wester asked politely. Yes, sir. Thank you for asking, sir. The woman spoke politely. Sarah, I need you to do something for me, Wester said politely as he took out the paper the old man had signed earlier. The paper floated over, and the woman looked at the paper. Her eyes widened more and more as she continued reading. Yes, sir, she said. Then she took the paper and walked over to a wall. She spoke complex and unfamiliar words that warped her surroundings. 10 seconds later, an outcropping in the shape of a piece of paper appeared on the wall. Sarah put the paper in the outcropping, and the paper burned away. Ding, ding, ding. 3 bells rang throughout an unfathomable distance, their sounds ignoring the upper limit of the speed of sound. Have a good hunt, Wester commented politely as he left the room. Thank you, sir, Sarah said with a bow. Shing! Sarah was engulfed by a bright light, but the bright light vanished just as quickly as it had arrived. However, Sarah had undergone a world-shaking transformation. Her purple robes were replaced by a shining silver armor, covered with different runes. Golden wing bones were on the back of her armor, which were quickly filled out by bolts of lightning, resembling the feathers. A 2-meter-long spear appeared in her hands, also crackling with lightning. Shing! Then Sarah seemingly vanished. She had teleported away. Shing! Sarah reappeared in the grand hall through which Wester had gone. However, the hall was no longer empty. 10,000 people in golden armor with golden staves filled the hall in an orderly manner. We greet the general. The 10 people at the front of the army spoke in unison. Sarah exuded irresistible power as she looked at the gathered army. This was the 6th Legion, which was responsible for reconnaissance. Men and women of the 6th Legion, Sarah said, her voice echoing throughout the grand hall. The ancestor has given an order. Silence. The child of calamity has vanished, and a new child of calamity must have appeared in the world. The 6th Legion will comb the world. Every child in the world below the age of 1 must have their affinity tested with a blood test. If any child tests positive for an unknown affinity, the child will be brought to me personally. I expect you all to finish by the morning. Yes, General. All the soldiers echoed. Go. Shing! 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 All 10,000 people teleported out of the hall and reappeared in the air outside the building. Below them was a magnificent purple castle, built on top of several mountains of unfathomable height. The castle itself was several kilometers wide. Lightning crackled violently on the storm clouds below the mountains where the castle was built on. Nothing aside from an endless sea of clouds filled with lightning could be seen. The 10,000 people in the air crackled with lightning as their bodies shone in golden light. Bang! Then, with an explosion, all soldiers transformed into lightning as they shot into the horizon. Their speed was impossible to follow with one's eyes. On this night, many humans would notice golden shooting stars in the sky. On this night, all babies below the age of 1 would gain a tiny red dot on the fingertip of their index finger. This was where the blood was drawn from for the test. No one but the peak powers would notice that this had even happened. The entire world had been combed in but a single night, and no one had noticed. Yet, the child of calamity had not been found 1 month earlier on Earth. Thank you for your loyal support, and please visit us again. A superficially cheerful voice shouted this phrase from a medium-sized grocery store. The phrase was targeted at a middle-aged man that was just leaving the store. The middle-aged man slightly waved one of his hands to show that he had heard, but he couldn't be bothered to answer. As soon as the man left, the grocery store cashier sighed and went back to the cash register. The cashier was a young man with blonde hair, and he looked like he had just hit his 20s. A slight muscular frame was still visible when one looked at him from the back, but when looking at him from the front, one could only see a rather sizable beer belly. Clack thump, as the cashier walked back to the cash register. The sound of his cane could be heard on the floor of the grocery store. Hello, welcome to Stevie's. The cashier greeted with superficial politeness as he handled the next customer. Hard day at work, huh? The young customer asked the cashier. It's all right, the cashier answered with a slight chuckle. Everyone has to make a living. However, these words didn't reflect the cashier's real feelings. This fucking grocery store is killing me, I swear, he thought as he happily bagged the groceries. Every day with the same shit. Alex, do this. Alex, do that. I swear when I've saved up enough money for college, I'm going to burn this place to the ground. Of course, these were only thoughts created in a stressful situation. Alex knew that he wouldn't really do it. This cashier was Alexander Hoffman. Alex for short. Alex's life hadn't always been like this. He had had a bright future ahead of him in the past. Sadly, life didn't go his way. On the urging of his father, Alex started doing sports when he was 12. After all, doing sports while growing was very beneficial to the development of a teenager. Alex's father was a huge fan of the MNFA, the Multinational Fighting Association. The MNFA let fighters from nearly all disciplines of martial arts fight each other with the least rules possible. So, in short, it was an organization that handled mixed martial arts fights, MMA for short. Alex had also grown to like watching these fights, and when his father urged him to do some sports, Alex decided that he wanted to do MMA. His parents' feelings were mixed on that subject. On one hand, it was great that their child was finally doing some sports, but they could get pretty dangerous if something wasn't handled correctly. However, since it was not professional MMA and since there were several coaches around in the local gym, they agreed. Some time later, when Alex had had his first practice fight against another kid in the gym, he got his ass handed to him. Yet, this experience awakened a certain kind of stubbornness in him, an urge to win. Sadly, he lost the next couple of practice matches too. Well, one couldn't really consider these matches a loss since they weren't real matches. They were simply some sparring between two students. Yet when Alex didn't clearly win a fight, he saw it as a loss. Alex had already planned to change sports and join another one since it felt frustrating to see how everyone was better than himself. Yet he wanted to win at least one time. So he continued training, and eventually he won. When Alex won, he felt something that he had never felt before. It was a kind of indescribable high. He felt like he was floating on clouds, and he felt like he was the greatest in the world. The feeling of fighting which had always annoyed him since his body hurt after it, transformed into the polar opposite. This feeling of fighting others wasn't annoying. It was simply a clash between men. They were showcasing their power in a very primal fashion. Alex wanted to feel this feeling again. Alex stayed in the gym and even came more often. MMA had transformed from a chore into a hobby. The pain of sore muscles became a familiar pain that Alex even started to enjoy. It sounded cheesy, but the common phrase of every single sports coach in the world resonated with Alex. Pain is simply weakness leaving your body. As the years passed, Alex completely focused on MMA. Even his grades started to drop, which had already been average to begin with. Alex wasn't stupid, but he never paid attention in school and didn't learn anything. Stuff like math and physics was still okay since he could often deduce the correct answers logically, which was why those grades didn't suffer much. However, subjects like history and foreign languages had it far worse since one had to actually learn for these things. Alex had a ton of arguments with his parents over this, but Alex always said that his future was MMA. He would join the MNFA, and he would earn a ton of money. Alex barely passed high school, but decided against going to college. MMA was his future. Alex trained as hard as he could. His entire life depended on his success. If he didn't manage to get into the MNFA, he would lose. And one day, just after Alex's 20th birthday, he got accepted. This was the greatest day of his life. His dream was about to become a reality. Alex won his first match pretty easily since his first opponent was pretty weak. His horrible win-loss record proved that. Alex also won his second match, but it was a close one. Yet, tragedy struck at Alex's third match. The fight had been going fine. There was some back and forth, and he and his opponent were pretty evenly matched. And then the accident happened. Alex and his opponent had been fighting from a distance since no one managed to find a good opening to tackle the other one to the ground. Alex saw an opening in his opponent's defense and performed a roundhouse kick. Crack! His opponent barely recovered before the kick struck, and he managed to block it haphazardly. His opponent's elbow hit Alex's ankle. Alex's ankle immediately broke, and the medics jumped into the ring. A day later, Alex got the news that his bones had damaged the nerves and muscles in his leg. They could only fix it to the point that would allow him to walk somewhat normally with the support of a cane. But that was it. There was nothing more they could do. Alex's career was over. From the highest high of his life, Alex fell to the lowest low. Alex had earned quite a sum of money from his 3 fights, but he basically wasted all of it in a drunken haze of destruction over the next year. His life was over. There was nothing anymore. After a year, his family held an intervention for him, and Alex finally realized that he had to stop being such a pussy. 1 year was more than enough to wallow in self-pity. So Alex planned to save up some money for college. Right now, Alex was 22 years old, and he was working in a grocery store precisely for this reason. Even though his past was filled with incredible highs, and even though he fell into the lowest low, Alex was still young, and he knew that he could still make something of his life. He only had to work his ass off for the foreseeable future. Then he would go to college, and everything would turn for the better. Time passed in the grocery store, and after helping close up the place, Alex left at around 10 p.m. It was already dark out, but the streets were well lit. After all, Alex lived and worked in a less savory part of a big city. As Alex stepped out of the grocery store, his nose wrinkled. No matter how long he had lived here, he simply couldn't get used to the disgusting stench of the dirty streets. This part of the city was for low-income families, and the state of the streets reflected that very well. Garbage, cigarette butts, old newspapers, old furniture. This was a common sight on these streets. Alex tried to ignore the stench and walked home. His home was barely a kilometer away, a distance where people argued if they should drive or walk. Alex was walking since he wanted to keep his living costs as low as possible. Additionally, Alex somewhat enjoyed the walk since he was used to doing a lot of physical exercise. After some minutes, Alex stopped as he looked at a couple of cigarette butts on the street, and the cigarette bin right beside them. "Oh, come on," he thought. "The bin is right there." Alex used his cane to push the cigarette butts to the side of the closest building. He hated these people that treated the streets as their own toilet, but he didn't hate them enough to pick up the cigarette butts to throw them away. After some minutes, Alex heard the sound of a whining dog, and he stopped. This wasn't the usual sound of a whining dog. The dog's whining was very loud, high-pitched, painful, and desperate. Obviously, the dog was in a ton of pain. The sound of dogs was normal in this city, but that sound definitely wasn't normal. Alex searched around for the dog and found it in a dark alleyway between two buildings. The dog could barely be seen at the edge of the street lamp's lights. Blood. Bone. A concerned look appeared on Alex's face as he saw the dog. Both of its hind legs were severely broken. He could see blood coming out of its legs, and he could even see its bones poking out. No wonder it was in so much pain. Alex thought about if he should help it or not. He didn't have a pet, but he also didn't hate animals. It was nice to look at and interact with them, but he didn't want to bear the responsibility of owning a pet of his own. On top of that, pets were expensive. Yet when Alex saw the broken legs, he got reminded of his own injury. A slight pain came from his ankle as the scene of being rushed into the hospital returned to Alex's mind. In the end, Alex sighed. "Fine, I'll bring you to a vet, but I won't pay much for your care." Alex slowly walked into the alleyway and closed in on the dog. The dog didn't move and only continued crying in pain as Alex came closer. "Don't move." Alex stopped as the familiar feeling of adrenaline rushing through his veins assaulted him. There was a knife at his throat. Alex didn't dare to move as panic took hold of him, but he calmed down somewhat when he felt a hand hurriedly searching through his pockets. A robbery, Alex thought. Alex had only been in panic for 2 seconds, but his old fighting instincts kicked in. Yet Alex didn't attack. It was essential to analyze the opponent first. Otherwise, mistakes were bound to happen. As the hand of the robber searched through Alex's pocket, Alex slightly glanced at the robber. He wore a black hoodie and black sweatpants. It was hard to make out his facial features in the darkness while looking at him from such an awkward angle. Alex glanced at the arm that held the knife. He's gripping the knife with so much force that his arm is shaking, and the knife is also not directly touching my neck. He's probably new at this. Additionally, his arm is basically touching my shoulder. Alex also noted the appearance and condition of the dog. They injured the dog to lure me into this alleyway. A clever but cruel trick. However, a slight smirk appeared on Alex's face. "Sadly, you chose the wrong target." Bang! Alex's head shot backward and hit the lowered head of the robber. At the same time, Alex violently shoved his shoulder upward, pushing the knife away from him. The robber became disoriented. It was never a good feeling to butt heads with another person. Alex was in just as much pain, but as a former fighter, he could still make rational decisions under pain. Without hesitation, Alex lifted his cane. Bang! And hit the side of the robber's head with full force. The robber immediately lost his consciousness under the attack. Alex hadn't fought in over a year, but his muscles were still more powerful than average. The robber fell over as Alex smirked. Crack! Alex's smirk froze as it slowly transformed into terror. No, I didn't want to do that. Since the robber had lost consciousness, his body simply fell over to the side, and his head violently hit the hard pavement. A pool of dark blood was quickly forming below the robber's cracked skull. Alex's world stopped. He couldn't comprehend what was happening. Did he just kill someone? Alex began hyperventilating in panic as his mind tried to comprehend the magnitude of what he had just done. Crack! And then Alex's mind vanished. Alex's body landed beside the robber's. A huge crack could be seen at the back of his head. Behind Alex's body stood another man dressed in black, fury on his face. In his hand he carried a blood-smeared crowbar. This was the robber's friend, who had been hiding behind some trash in case something went wrong. When he saw the corpse of his friend, fury took hold of him, and he hit Alex on the back of the head with his crowbar full force. Alex died instantly. He didn't even know how he had died. Fuck! Fuck! The second robber shouted as he didn't know what he should do now. He had 2 corpses on his hands now. While the robber was panicking, two invisible azure wisps left the corpses. The azure wisps traveled into the sky and seemingly left the realm of Earth. Alex didn't feel alive nor dead. He was awake but also not awake. One could liken the state of his mind to dreaming. His mind didn't work properly, but there were still some rudimentary thoughts that appeared. The azure wisps entered an empty void, and they stopped. Many other wisps were there already, and new ones joined every second. After a minute, a bright white light suddenly appeared in the nothingness, and all the wisps flew to it. They were inherently drawn to it. This was where they were supposed to go. These were the souls of the dead, and Alex was just one insignificant soul among many. Suddenly, the void shook. It was like reality was being torn apart. However, the wisps only continued to travel to the light. They didn't even notice what was happening. Reality seemingly broke like glass as an even darker hole appeared. Then a gigantic hand shot out of the hole. It was the hand of a young adult man. With unreal speeds, the hand shot at one particular wisp, Alex's soul. The hand used its thumb and index finger to clamp down on Alex's soul, and Alex felt clarity return to his mind. Wait, what happened? Yet, before Alex could look at his surroundings, he felt himself being pulled into the distance. Before the hand vanished into the closing rift of reality, Alex could hear a voice, and that voice only spoke one word. Yoik! What happened? Where am I? Alex's mind was confused beyond belief. He knew that something had happened to him. He felt like he had been dreaming, and just now woke up. However, he had no idea where he was. Alex only knew that he was currently standing in the most imposing hall he had ever seen in his entire life. Just the sheer size of this place struck him dumb. Alex suspected that this hall was over a kilometer wide. It was probably even 100 meters tall. Who would build such a thing? The entire place was colored in black and red, evoking a kind of evil feeling. Did they hire some teenager to design this place? Who colors such a grand hall in black and red? Alex thought as his brows furrowed. Even more, why is everything empty? Sure, there are some things at the walls, but there is nothing in between them except for this big dark carpet. Alex looked at the carpet and noticed that something was embroidered on it. It was a white jester's mask. Basically, it was a white mask with the face of a laughing person. Creepy. Alex looked to the front and his eyes widened. About 100 meters to Alex's front was a vast and tall throne. The throne was probably over 10 meters wide and reached the ceiling of this gigantic hall. Alex also noticed that someone was sitting on the throne. It was a young man, probably in his early 20s, just like Alex. He had long black and red hair, but Alex couldn't see how long his hair was exactly since this man was currently facing Alex, looking at him with a smirk. Another interesting aspect of the man's appearance was his red eyes, but Alex didn't notice them from such a distance. Although he also looked a bit ridiculous since he was far too small for such a wide throne. That a goth kid? Alex thought. Wait, as far as I know, goths are more black and gray. I think emos are more black and red. Did he design this place? Probably, judging by his get-up. Alex continued staring at the young man while the young man only smirked back. Seconds passed. Alex was looking awkwardly from side to side. The other party wasn't initiating a conversation and only stared at him. Should he initiate a conversation? Well, he had enough questions, so why not? Excuse me. Alex shouted loudly, his voice echoing in the vast, empty hall. After all, the man was around 100 meters away from him. No reaction. Maybe he didn't hear me? Alex thought, unsure. Alex took a step forward. Thump. Alex fell forward and barely caught himself with his hands. What? Where's my cane? Alex thought in panic as he searched around for his cane. Sadly, he couldn't find it. Later one day, 4 be later, 2 1 2 f later one day, 4 d later, 1 day 4 c, 3 later 1 d 4 a fate later one day, 4 c b later 2 1 2 f, later one day, 4 c later, 1 day 4 f at later 1 d 4 c 2. I mean, I can kind of walk without a cane, but it's awkward as fuck, Alex thought as he stood up. His balance was rather stable, which surprised him. Usually, due to the nerve damage in his ankle, his right foot always awkwardly flopped around. Alex could only stand on that foot by perfectly balancing his body weight along his entire leg. Alex took one step forward, and he took a deep breath in shock as he realized that he could use his right foot. How? Alex balanced on his left leg as he moved his right foot in the air. Full mobility. No awkwardness. Whoosh. Alex performed a roundhouse kick and his mind was going wild. This was just like back when he had been fighting. What the hell? Alex tried out his right leg some more as he jumped and kicked a couple of times. However, after some seconds, Alex deflated with a sigh. There's no way my foot is actually healed. Even if it had been healed, there should be some minor awkwardness in my movement, and some of the muscles in my foot should have atrophied. This is obviously a dream. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang throughout the hall, coming from Alex's front. The sound was so loud that Alex's ears started ringing as he was thrown back by a shockwave. Luckily, the shockwave didn't injure him. Every damn time, an angry voice shouted. Alex shook his head to regain his calm. Every damn time, the voice repeated, obviously working itself into a rage. Every time I get a soul from your world, they always think that it's a dream. Alex lifted his head and looked towards the throne. Was the young man speaking? It was hard to see from such a distance. Wait, then how can I hear him? It sounds like he's just beside me. This is getting boring, the voice said with annoyance. How about one time one of you guys just walks forward? How about one time one of you guys just walks up to me? Alex looked around as he tried to find the origin of the voice, but there was nothing around him. On top of that, the voice was coming from the front. Was it really that young man? Every damn time I watch you guys and every damn time you do the same fucking thing, the man shouted. Alex saw that the man's body was slightly moving from side to side, but it was hard to judge from such a distance. Oh, what's this hall? Oh, what happened to my body? The man shouted with a sarcastic tone. I think he lifted his right arm to imitate someone speaking, Alex thought as he concentrated on the throne in the distance. Bang! Another explosion, but this time Alex managed to barely remain upright. However, this explosion was even more shocking than the first one. Why? Because Alex had seen what had caused the explosion. The young man had lifted his right arm and then slammed down. And then something shocking happened. The armrest of the throne moved inward and stopped below the young man's fist. A 10-meter wide throne had shrunken to just a bit more than 5 meters. And the explosion? That was the young man's fist. Just the mere act of slamming one's fist down on an armrest had thrown Alex to the ground from a distance of over 100 meters. That was insane. All of this took some time to describe, but barely any time had passed in reality. The young man was still ranting. And then you always say the same fucking words. You always say excuse me. Can't you say something else for a change? Can at least one of you guys say hello or good morning or fuck you or just anything else? Alex still couldn't deal with the situation. Okay, that's impossible. This must be a dream, he thought. Whoop. Suddenly, the distance between Alex and the man shrank. In less than a second, Alex stood barely half a meter in front of the man. What did you just fucking think? The young man growled with narrowed eyes. I dare you. Think that one more time. See what happens. For some reason, Alex felt terrified right now. Usually, he wouldn't be afraid of a young man sitting on a throne, but for some reason, Alex felt like he had to be very careful right now. Otherwise, he might make a mistake he would regret. Alex looked nervously into the eyes of the young man while the young man glared back. Then how about I say it instead? Alex asked. The young man blinked a couple of times in surprise. Oh, that's a new one, he said, all his rage gone. Do go on ahead. I want to see how this plays out. Alex gulped. This is obviously a dream, Alex said. What makes you think so? The young man asked as he leaned back. The distant back of the throne moved forward of its own volition. That, Alex said as he pointed at the back of the throne. Thrones don't do that. Mine does, the man said with a smirk. How? Alex asked. He wanted to know how the guy could rationalize something like that. Like this. Whoop, whoop. Whoop. Suddenly, the entire hall became wavy. Walls were shooting at Alex and then going far into the distance. The throne was even waving around like one of these wacky inflatable arm tube men on the streets. Surprisingly, Alex stayed calm. See? Alex said calmly. Obviously a dream. The hall stopped and the young man wrinkled his nose. All right, this is getting boring. Shing! And Alex's right foot was cut off at his ankle just like that. The young man didn't even move. Alex fell to the ground in surprise and looked at his bleeding stump of a foot. His face turned into horror, but after 2 seconds, it surprisingly went back to a calm expression. See? I don't feel any pain, Alex said. Therefore this is a dream. The young man chuckled. You're under shock. Give it some seconds, the young man said with a smirk. Alex only looked with skepticism at the young man and then back at his right foot. He moved his right leg around a bit in morbid curiosity. Some seconds passed. Alex's face turned into a slight grimace. Okay, maybe it stings a little. Give it time, the young man said. Alex started sweating as his breathing quickened. Okay, maybe it stings a lot. Give it time, the young man repeated with a smirk. Maybe arg. Alex's voice stopped as his hand went to his right leg. His entire body was straining itself as it became harder for him to breathe. And then Alex lost it. However, he couldn't be blamed for his poor reaction. Take a normal person from a street and cut their leg off. See how they react. There we go, the young man said with a smirk. Now do you. Ugh. The young man's brows furrowed. Okay, now do. Ugh. Shut up. Whoop. Suddenly all the pain disappeared. Alex's mind was shocked. Wait, what? Alex looked down and saw that his right foot was back. What? You done? The young man asked with an annoyed tone. You got that out of your system, yes, or do you want to shout some more? Alex couldn't comprehend the situation as he tried to make sense of everything. All right, this is taking too long, the young man said as he stood up. Bang! And then he kicked Alex into the side, throwing him 2 meters into the distance. All right, so the man began as he continued walking to Alex. You died. You are dead. This is not a dream. Bang! Another kick. Alex coughed several times. These kicks were no joke. The man continued walking to Alex. You were just on your way to the afterlife, and that's when I grabbed your soul. Alex started to get up, but before he could straighten himself, he got hit by another kick that threw him into the distance. I've transported you to my realm, the young man said with a smirk as his hands gestured to the hall around him. This is my personal palace. Alex quickly got up as the young man reached him again. Whoosh! The young man's kick missed as Alex turned his upper body sideways. Bang! And then Alex punched the young man in the face. Time seemingly froze as Alex's fist hit the young man's nose. Arg fuck! Alex suddenly shouted as he shook his fist. He looked at it and saw that his index and middle finger were broken. Alex had just punched the nose of the young man, but it felt like he had punched a nail made of steel. The young man only smirked viciously. And that's exactly why I chose you, he said. By now his voice sounded calm but arrogant. Alex looked with shock at the young man. What the hell was going on? Any normal person, the young man said as he gestured grandly to his hall, who saw what you have seen would cower before me in fear. Everything I have shown up to now, my power over space, my ability to cut off your leg in an instant, even this very hall would have sent awe, fear, terror, and respect into anyone's heart. However, the man shouted, his voice sounding pleased. You are not like a normal person. No, you are different. The man took a step forward as Alex began sweating. His fight or flight instincts kicked in. Usually he always chose fight, but in this instant he felt like flight was a better alternative. Everyone else would have thrown themselves at my knees, begging me to not play with their lives any longer. Another step. That's so boring, the man said with a neutral expression. I want excitement, fighting, someone that doesn't take shit from anyone. I want chaos, the man said with a smirk as he looked deeply into Alex's eyes. Alex gulped. Chosen for what? Alex asked, trying to hide the panic in his voice. Chosen to change the world, the man said with a smirk. Then he chuckled a bit, turned around, and walked back to his throne, which had just appeared behind him. He sat down and looked at Alex again with a smirk, just like back when Alex had first arrived here. Alex remained silent for a couple of seconds as he calmed down, trying to analyze the situation. Obviously, this isn't a dream. The pain is too real, and now that I take the possibility that this is real into account, I also notice that my thoughts are too orderly. Usually in a dream, I never notice that it's a dream since a big part of my brain is asleep. I have to throw these preconceived notions of what counts as reality out of my mind and learn to accept that this is all real. Alex looked at the man sitting in front of him. And that means that he's also real. What is he? He can't be a normal human. Finally, you are actually thinking about your current situation, the man said. Took you long enough. Now that Alex was calming down, he also noticed that this man had reacted to his thoughts several times. Does this mean that he can read my mind? Yes, I can, the man said. A mortal human life might be beyond complex for you, but for me, it's not very complicated. Your mind and soul follow rules, and when something follows rules, you can extrapolate what the something does at any given time, assuming you have the processing power to take everything into account. Alex took a deep breath. Too many strange things had happened in these past minutes, and he couldn't be sure about anything except that his life was probably about to change severely. What happened? Alex asked, calmer than before. By now, he had realized that this young man didn't want to kill or torture him. Otherwise, the young man wouldn't have spent so much time trying to demonstrate that Alex was actually here in reality. Look at you, the young man said with a smirk. You know that this is reality, and you know that my power far eclipses your own. You know that I could kill you like a fly if I so wanted to. Yet you are not bowing down or licking my boots, the young man said with a chuckle. Instead, you are still talking to me like we're equals. The smirk of the young man widened. I really made a good catch today. Alex furrowed his brows. Okay, but what happened? Alex asked again. The young man chuckled and leaned back on his throne. Death, he said. Whoom. Suddenly, the hall vanished as Alex appeared in a dark alleyway. For a second, Alex thought that he had just dreamed all of this, but that thought quickly died when he noticed the gigantic throne in the alleyway with the man sitting on it. This is where you died, the man said as he gestured to the ground. Alex took a deep breath and looked down. What he saw made his insides shudder. In front of him in the dark alleyway were two corpses. All of Alex's memories of his death immediately returned. One corpse was of the man he had accidentally killed, while the other corpse belonged to Alex. Currently, only these two corpses lay in the alleyway. The injured dog had either fallen asleep, had died, or had lost consciousness. Alex wasn't sure. How did I die? Alex asked. He couldn't remember what had killed him, but judging by the appearance of the back of his own head, he could make a guess. Your victim had a friend for insurance in case something went wrong, the young man explained. When he saw you kill his friend, he charged over with a crowbar and, well, you can imagine the rest. Alex looked at the two corpses with a complex expression. Ironic, isn't it? The young man asked. Your opponent died from a hit to the head, while you also died from a hit to the head. You died the same way as the person you've killed. I didn't want this, Alex said slowly. I didn't want to kill him. I only wanted to incapacitate him. The young man chuckled. And that's exactly why this situation is so entertaining. There are so many people willing to kill someone, and such a thing is simple. However, when you accidentally kill someone, the entire situation has a different taste. Now there is complexity. Now there is no one you can truly blame. A tragedy has happened, but no one is at fault, no one to get angry at. What will the family of this young man do? Will they blame you? However, you have also died, and you also were in a dangerous situation. They can't blame you. Will they blame the young man for his actions? A little, but does something like this warrant an immediate death? The young man chuckled again. There's no easy way out of this situation. That's what makes this so interesting. What will happen now? Alex asked. Well, your corpses will remain there for the entire night, since not many people pass through here during the night. the young man explained. A middle-aged woman on the phone will notice your corpses in the morning and will call the police. At that point, the young man furrowed his brows and moved his fingers a little bit. This gesture reminded Alex of someone that was calculating something in their head. Your killer will flee into a different city relatively far from here, the young man said absent-mindedly. However, he will be caught in about 4 weeks. Then he will stand trial for first-degree murder, but he will only be convicted of second-degree murder since he killed you out of revenge. He will get a sentence of 25 years. At that point, the young man's speech became slower as he concentrated more. After he finished his sentence, he will get back to the street and will eventually die of an overdose. The young man relaxed again as he leaned back. Meanwhile, Alex took a deep breath. Obviously, the young man didn't know the future. Otherwise, he could have said everything in an instant. If one were able to see the future, one wouldn't have to think so hard. This meant that the young man had simply calculated everything. However, that was even more terrifying. Whoop! Reality changed again as they returned to the grand hall. Anyway, back to the topic, the young man said. While you were busy killing and getting killed, I was searching for a suitable candidate. I found about 2,000 fitting people on Earth, and I chose you because you were simply the first one that would kick the bucket. If you had died just a couple days later, you wouldn't have arrived here. Isn't that lucky? The young man asked with a smirk. Alex took another deep breath. He had to adapt to his new situation. Yes, he had died, and he was supposed to enter the afterlife. However, this person had brought him here. Alex had to look forward now instead of backward. Candidate for what? Alex asked. As I've said, changing the world, the young man repeated. Alex's eyes narrowed. Which world? He asked. The smirk of the young man widened. Aren't you a smart one? He asked. I'm a bit surprised that you caught on this quickly. Don't you have the ability to calculate everything? Alex asked. Why would you be surprised about my actions then? The young man chuckled. Yes, I do have that ability, but I slightly bent the rules for you, he said. I put a small layer of protection on you that makes it impossible for me to calculate your future. I can still see what you are currently thinking, but I can't see what you will think or do next. The young man leaned back again. Of course I can destroy that layer of protection whenever I want, but where's the fun in that? I don't want to immediately know what you will do. I want to see it and get surprised, the young man said. Alex nodded. I can understand that, he said. So, which world? My world, the young man said. My main world, I mean, not Earth. Alex looked at the young man for some seconds. Your world? He asked. I assume that means that you are some sort of god, right? Exactly, the young man said as he leaned his head on his right hand. I created a world where everyone can reach supreme power. I added a peculiar type of energy into the makeup of the world that can be absorbed by living beings, severely increasing their power. In theory, you could even reach my level in that world, the young man said. Alex immediately made several connections in his head. Sounds like some kind of fantasy world, like in an anime or a game, he thought. The young man chuckled. Yes, you could look at it like that, he said. And how am I supposed to change this world? Alex asked. I'm only a normal man, not a god like you. Now we're getting to the interesting part, the young man said. Alex looked with a complex expression at the young man. Changing a world filled with people that could become as powerful as this god right before him? How? He was only a mortal. Now, don't be hasty, the young man said with a smirk as he read Alex's mind again. Right now, you are like a child hearing that they have to lead their father's company in the future. Of course everything will appear like it's too much. In fact, you don't have to do much at all. You only have to become stronger. That's it. Alex furrowed his brows. That's it. But you said I'm supposed to change the world. Correct, the young man said as he leaned back again. However, you becoming powerful is exactly what will change the world. Could you stop talking in riddles and just directly tell me what you want me to do? Alex asked. The young man snickered. Sure. I already told you a little bit about my main world, the young man said. To repeat, my world allows someone to reach supreme power by increasing the power of your body and mind. There are innumerable ways to supreme power. You can use the inherent energy in the air to increase the power of your mind. This strengthens your soul, and the more powerful your soul gets, the more powerful your mental abilities become. You can crush elephants with just your mind or move the energy of the world in such a way that it creates powerful destructive forces. However, you can also focus on strengthening your body. By absorbing the energy in the atmosphere and fusing it with your body, you can become so fast and so powerful that the other person that trains their mind wouldn't even be able to react to an attack of yours. You can also fuse with some ethereal concepts and summon them. You can also concentrate on weapons, which allows you to sunder reality with a move of your weapon. You can also comprehend the concepts of how the world works and manipulate the energy in such a way that it imitates these concepts. You would gain control over fire, gravity, time, space, water, metal, life, and so on. You can even just purely absorb energy without end, becoming a walking bomb that could unleash many years of accumulated power in a single strike. Alex listened intently. All of this sounded too magical. In fact, it sounded more like a game with different classes. All the classes could become about equally powerful near the end of a game via their own ways. Letter 1D 4 if letter 1D 6 2 6 letter 1D 6 2 5 letter 1D 4 5 B letter 1D 6 3 0 letter 1D 6 3 7 dot letter 1D 4 5 0 letter 1D 6 3 0 letter 1D 4 5A. The young man laughed. Yes, you could also view it as a game. However, remember, this is reality, not a game. Alex nodded. So, in short, there are innumerable ways to power, the young man said. Then, he paused. Alex looked at the young man as his brows furrowed. After that, his nose wrinkled in disgust. Anyway, the young man said as he looked at Alex again, not as chipper as before. I have implemented all these different paths to power. Over time, humanity slowly began to discover all these different paths, and the peak powers of humanity became more and more powerful. Everything was going well, and I had a hell of a time watching the different paths of power fight each other. Then the young man gritted his teeth. And that's when he showed up, the young man said with disgust. Who? Alex asked. Shing. Thump. A bright light shone for a short moment in front of Alex, and he heard the sound of something hitting the floor. Alex looked over and he took a deep breath. It was the naked corpse of a young man. This guy, the young man repeated with hatred. The so-called Mage Emperor. Mage Emperor? Alex thought as he looked at the naked corpse. One of the paths to power I created was the path of magic, the young man explained. This was also the first example I gave you when I described some paths to power in my world. Alex felt a bit awkward talking with the young man while a naked corpse was lying beside them. You mean the ones that use the energy to increase the power of their mind and soul? Alex asked as he looked at the corpse with discomfort. Yes, the young man answered neutrally. Just like everyone else, the mages sought supremacy over everyone, but they weren't really any more powerful than the others. That was until the Mage Emperor appeared. The young man spat in disgust while giving the corpse a side eye. He became the most powerful person in the world, but instead of furthering his own power even more, he concentrated on making the path of magic supreme. So he killed all the most powerful people of the other paths of power, the young man said with some anger. Even more, after he killed the most powerful people, he ordered the other mages to kill everyone else that has reached a sufficient standard of power without practicing magic. In just some few short years, this fucking guy ruined thousands of years of progress. The young man shouted as he glared at the corpse of burning eyes. The young man stood up as he paced around in anger. Alex kept to himself, not saying or thinking anything. By now, Alex had realized that this god was very easy to anger. Do you know how fucking boring the world has been ever since then? The young man shouted as he glared at Alex. Alex quickly shook his head. Only mages are left, and the path of magic is the only known path to true power, the young man said with frustration. If anyone wants power, they simply join the mages. Path of least resistance, you know. Why try anything new when you already know of a way to get what you want? The young man parroted with anger and annoyance. Why go through that hassle, huh? Even people that try to make the other paths to power work will eventually give up and join the mages after realizing that their progress isn't fast enough. No shit, your progress isn't fast. You are blazing a brand new path on your own. And the worst thing is that the mages aren't even suppressing the other paths to power. The young man shouted. They don't even need to. Everyone joins them eventually. Well, no shit. You have thousands of years of refined spells, techniques, and crafts while everyone else has fuck, all due to your purge in the past. Of course they're running towards you in droves. My entire fucking world is filled with nothing but mages, and battles amongst mages are one of the most boring ones in existence. The young man shouted. You ever seen people just flinging stuff at each other from a distance for hours on end? Shit's boring as fuck. The young man's pacing accelerated. I'm bored as shit watching my own fucking world when it's supposed to bring me entertainment. And it's all this asshole's fault. Bang. Boom. The young man kicked the corpse in rage, and the corpse flew with insane speeds at the wall, which promptly exploded. Alex took a deep breath. After kicking the corpse, the young man seemed to feel better, and an evil smirk appeared on his face. You should have seen him when he came into my palace like he owned the place, the young man said. Back then, I was looking rather favorably upon him since he managed to become quite powerful. I assumed that the other paths to power would recover with time. Yet, that idiot just had to act like he owned the place and told me to make space for him. Shing! The naked corpse appeared in front of the young man again, uninjured. Bang! Another kick, another explosion at the wall. Just like right now, I kicked him around the room until he eventually died, the young man said with a genuinely malicious grin. It took hours, but he still eventually succumbed to his ever-increasing count and severity of injuries. Alex remained completely silent. This guy was dangerous. The young man took a deep breath and looked at Alex again. Anyway, that's where you come into play, he said. Someone that has the guts and drive to become truly powerful. I will send you into my world with a body that is unable to practice magic. However, you are a person that wants to become more powerful, someone that chases power. If magic doesn't work for you, you will find another way. And that's your entire job, the young man said with a smirk as he sat down on his throne again. Simply be yourself in my world. Do whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't matter because, in the end, you will chase power no matter what, and you will have to do it with something that isn't magic. That's all you have to do. Alex thought about the young man's words as he furrowed his brows. Becoming as powerful as this god in front of him? That didn't sound bad. A world where people actually truly fought each other. That didn't sound bad. Being able to feel himself becoming more powerful, and being able to push himself to his limits yet again with a new body. That didn't sound bad. However, Alex still sighed. I want to actually go through with this. But it somehow feels weird since it feels like I didn't have a choice in the matter. PFFT, the young man spat with a short laugh. No choice? That's your issue? All right then, let me give you a choice. Go back to your world and join the afterlife, or come to my world. You can decide for yourself. Alex thought about his old world and his family that he had left behind. He missed them. However, he had already died. There was no way that this god would resurrect him. He had lost them anyway. Alex sighed again. The god had given him a choice, but it wasn't truly a choice since Alex's decision had already been made before the choice had even existed. Finally done with those useless thoughts? The young man asked with a smirk. Alex looked at the naked corpse for a second. Then he turned to the young man and nodded. A new life was about to begin for him. Not so fast, the young man shouted. Don't get ahead of yourself. Before you join my world, I need to give you a helping hand. Alex's right eyebrow rose. A helping hand? Yes, the young man said with a satisfied smirk as he leaned back. I have 3 presents for you that will make your journey to power far easier. 3 presents? Alex asked with a raised brow. Yes, 3 presents, the young man answered as he leaned back on his throne with a smirk. The strongest person that isn't following the path of magic has only barely reached the fourth realm, while there are many more realms to go. You don't have any inheritance for techniques or any other person that can help you when you reach the third realm. The first couple of realms are still fine, but you will have to blaze your own path starting at the third realm. So, you'll need some help. Otherwise, it would become impossible for you to reach any significant level of power. Alex sighed. No help, huh? Alex thought. I have to create my very own path to power. Alex looked at the young man for a couple of seconds, as the young man only smirked back. Alex's body shook slightly. Nothing to rely on. No person I can ask for pointers. Everything is all on me. That actually sounds exciting. Yes, Alex's body was not shaking out of fear or anxiety, but out of excitement. Alex hadn't played many games in the past, but just like many other people, Alex also wanted his life to be filled with a bit more excitement. The mundane grayness and sterile systems in his old world were too boring. 2 fists couldn't beat 4 hands. This was an old phrase that Alex had heard from one of his coaches in the past. It meant that numbers always beat individual strength. A top-tier fighter might be able to win against 2, 3, or maybe even 4 people at once in a battle, but 10, 100, 1,000? Impossible. Just by piling onto the fighter with their body weight would allow the mass of enemies to make the fighter helpless, since there was only so much muscle a man could have. One man couldn't resist hundreds of kilograms of weight pressing down on their body. Alex looked at the young man. However, is that still true for him? Alex thought. Would the numbers of normal humans even matter when they can't even get through his skin? Would the numbers matter when he can just kill everyone with a casual wave of his hand? Fighting has always been a lifestyle of mine, but as long as I'm not in top form, and as long as I'm not in the top 1% of fighters, I can't make a living out of it. Even more, a single slight injury might make it impossible for me to fight again in the future. However, in this world, I can break these known conventions. I can achieve true power. Tell me, Alex said with a seemingly calm voice. However, even he could hear the slight tremble in his own voice. The young man only snickered a bit. However, he didn't comment on Alex's thoughts. After all, he had told Alex more than once that he was perfectly suited for his world. Shing! A white light shone briefly, and a black cube appeared in front of Alex, floating in the air. This is your weapon, the young man explained. Alex took a hold of the cube, and his body nearly fell over. This cube was heavy. It doesn't look like a weapon, Alex said with furrowed brows. That's because it doesn't know what path you're choosing yet, the young man said. Whenever you decide on your own path to power, tell the cube what it should become, and it will assume that form. Keep in mind that this form is permanent, and that it can't be easily altered in the future. Why a weapon? Alex asked as he looked at the cube. Because there are no smiths in the world that know how to make powerful weapons that are not mage weapons. At some point, you would need to create your own weapon if you follow a path that requires one. If you had to do that, you would need to blaze 2 new paths instead of 1. We can't make things too hard on you now, can we? The young man explained with a grin. Alex immediately noticed a problem. So, I either can't use this weapon now, or it will also become useless in the future. After all, weapons are not created equal. The young man chuckled a bit. This one is, he said. Alex blinked twice in confusion. It can grow by absorbing powerful metal, he explained. In the beginning, it won't be much better than a regular sword or regular spear, but as long as you give it great materials, it will become more powerful. In short, this weapon will accompany you for the rest of your life, no matter how powerful you will become. Alex looked at the cube with newfound appreciation. That really sounds magical. However, that's expected since I'm entering a world filled with mages. The young man frowned when he read Alex's thoughts. The fact that his world was filled with nothing but mages was a sore spot for him. Your next present is a separate space, he said. This space acts as a world of its own, but a far smaller one. Don't bother looking for it since you can't use it yet. Wait until you reach the second realm. Everything about the space will be explained to you then. Alex nodded. Having some kind of extra dimension or something sounded quite useful. Additionally, Alex was sure that this separate space was not so simple. There were probably more things it could do. And as for your third and last present, the young man said as he leaned back on his throne again with a smirk. You get to ask me 9 questions in total, and I will answer them honestly, he said. Alex looked at the young man with surprise. He could ask God 9 questions in total? Did this mean that he could ask about the origins of the world? Could he ask about some secret techniques only the God knew? Yes, you can, the young man answered. However, he shouted, you don't get to remember your questions and answers immediately. Alex frowned. What do you mean? The young man only grinned. 1 question and 1 answer per major breakthrough, the young man said. You get to ask 9 questions since my world has 9 realms of power. You get to ask all these questions now, but the memories of them will only be unlocked as your strength increases. Alex took a deep breath. This revelation changed the entire meaning of these questions. Initially, Alex had been interested in how the world worked to satiate his curiosity, but now these questions could help his future self. Alex knew that becoming truly powerful was nearly impossible. After all, how many supremely powerful people existed in that world? Alex wasn't so arrogant that he believed that he could easily achieve something that millions of people couldn't. Alex remained silent for several minutes as he thought about what he should ask. The young man didn't move during all of this time. All right, Alex said after some minutes. For my first question, what would be the optimal way to start my journey to power? The question had been asked, and Alex had sacrificed this question for his future. That's a smart question, the young man said, pleased. First of all, you need the basics. You need sufficient physical strength, sufficient mental strength, sufficient mana, and sufficient combat experience. In order to get sufficient physical strength, you need to follow a specific routine. Train your physical body until it's completely destroyed. After that, relax, close your eyes, and absorb the energy in the atmosphere. Due to your special constitution that makes practicing magic impossible, the energy won't enter your soul but your body. Your body will be strengthened and it will regenerate. This routine will also help you in achieving sufficient mana and sufficient mental strength. By absorbing the energy in the atmosphere, the stuff that people in my world call mana, your mana storage will increase. At the same time, breaking your body more and more will increase your willpower, while the absorption of mana will have a nourishing effect on your mind. In order to gain sufficient combat experience, I would advise you to live in the wilderness close to the village I am sending you. Try to survive there without any human help. If you feel like you are not in danger anymore, go further into the wild and survive there. Power is gained amongst danger. Follow these things for the next 2 years, and you should be ready to join human society again. When you've done all that, search for an academy in the nearby towns. Don't worry, there will be an academy that's just perfect for someone like you. And that's all, the young man said with a grin. That should give you the optimal start in your journey. Alex took all of this in. All right, then for my second question. Thwap! Alex's body suddenly jerked, and he felt like his mind had been hit with a hammer. He looked around, and he saw that he was still standing in the hall. The young man was also in front of him. However, the young man was laughing hysterically. What happened? Alex asked in confusion. The young man calmed down, but his face was filled with amusement. You've just asked your last question, and man, your last question was a doozy, he said with a snicker. For a second, Alex wanted to ask what he was talking about, but then he remembered that he would lose part of his memories. Apparently that had already happened. Because of your last question, I've changed a couple of things, the young man said as his grin widened in excitement. Originally, I didn't want to give you an elemental affinity. After all, it would be a bit pointless since you can't practice magic. However, your last question threw all of these plans out of the window, the young man shouted with excitement. Now, I'm giving you a special affinity, and you might even be able to use it if you train hard enough. Who knows? Alex was still confused since he felt like he had been transported into the future. Additionally, the young man shouted as he grinned widely. You will get a new name. Alex blinked a couple of times. New name? Why? Because I say so. the young man shouted with a laugh. Parents have the right to give their children a name, and you will receive a brand new body that I have given life to. In essence, I am somewhat your father. Therefore, I get to choose a new name for you. Alex really didn't like hearing that. He had gone his entire life by Alex. Suddenly changing it sounded weird. I don't care, the young man shouted. However, he didn't seem angry at all. Instead, he actually appeared madly excited. It was like he was about to see the greatest show of his life. You will use this name. You will be forced to use this name. Whenever you use your old name, you will feel pain. Alex really didn't want that. Yet the god didn't care. From today onward, your name is Shang. Remember your name, Shang? Shang? Alex thought. That's a weird nah. Shing. And Alex was gone. He had been teleported to his new world. The young man leaned back with a snicker. Oh, this is going to be great, he said to himself with a smirk. Thunk. Alex's mind was thrown into disarray suddenly. It was like he had just received a punch to the head. Alex's hand went to his butt out of reflex, since he felt some pain coming from it. That's when he felt grass. Grass? Alex thought. Alex opened his eyes and looked around. Forest. This was the only word that appeared in his mind when he saw his new surroundings. Thick pine trees were all around Alex. Alex could hear some birds chirping, and he heard the buzzing of insects. The smell of nature also immediately assaulted him. Sure enough, I have been sent somewhere, probably that God's main world or something, Alex thought as he looked around. Alex stood up, and while doing so, immediately noticed something peculiar. Standing up is easier than before, Alex thought. Alex looked down at his body and his brows furrowed. My big belly is gone, Alex thought. As Alex looked at his own body, he noticed that he had a slim build. On top of that, he wore different clothes now. Right now, Alex wore black cloth pants and a black shirt. Surprisingly, the fabric felt rather nice. However, Alex noticed something else that he didn't like one bit. I'm smaller, Alex thought with narrowed eyes. Previously, Alex had been 187 centimeters tall, but now he barely reached 160 centimeters, according to his estimations. Alex touched his face and noticed that it was also rather slim. I'm smaller, my unnecessary fat is gone, but my muscles are also gone, Alex thought. This is either the body of someone that only does cardio, or I'm in the body of a teenager. I don't think that this god would send me into a grown body that's only 160 centimeters tall. After all, he wants me to become powerful, and height is an insane advantage in physical combat. So, I'm probably in the body of a teenager. Assuming that I will reach a height of above 180 centimeters in my adulthood, my current height of 160 centimeters means that I still have quite some growing to do. This means that I'm probably in the body of a 14-year-old, Alex thought. Something on Alex's head tickled him, and he moved it to the side. It was hair, and when Alex noticed some strands of his hair, he also noticed a different change. Well, seems like my blonde hair is gone, Alex lamented as he saw his new black hair. After getting familiar with his new body, Alex looked around himself and noticed two things. One was a bulging sack, and the other was the black cube the god had given him. Alex opened the bag and looked inside. These were probably some basic things that the god had prepared for him. Clothes, 3 red flasks, a survival knife, shoes, and some meat jerky, Alex thought as he looked at the sack. Basically, the bare necessities to survive in the wilderness. Alex took out one of the 3 red flasks and looked at it. The color of the liquid in the flask was a vibrant red, and the liquid was rather viscous. Could these be health potions? I mean, I kind of am in a fantasy world. Alex wasn't sure, but he assumed that he was right. After checking his inventory, Alex picked up the black cube and put it in the bag. However, his hand halted as he realized something else. Did the black cube become lighter? He thought as he moved the black cube around a bit. Probably not, but it does feel lighter. Alex frowned as his mind tried to find the reason. My old body was out of shape, but I still had quite some muscle. Yet, this untrained teenage body can easily carry the cube. Alex scratched his chin and thought, is this normal? Is this the effect of being in a world that's bathed in this mysterious energy that's all around me in the air? The guy said that most people call it mana, so I should probably also get used to calling it mana. I don't want to appear out of place. Possible, Alex thought. I should test that. The guy said that I can't push mana into my soul, which means that something in my body is different from a normal human body. The inability to do something that everyone else can do basically means that I'm disabled in a certain sense. However, the god wouldn't send me into a body that can't become more powerful. He also said that most of my mana will end up in my body. Alex quickly shook his head. Now's not the time to think about these things, Alex. First you need. Alex stopped thinking as his head was suddenly droning. It felt like he had gotten a migraine. What's going on now? Can't you give me a break? However, the headache only increased and Alex fell to his knees as he breathed heavily. His mind was going through everything that the god had told him, and Alex quickly found the answer. Really? Alex thought with frustration and anger. You won't even allow me to think of my true name? No answer. Fine, fine. I'm Shang. And just like that, the headache had vanished. So it really is like this, Alex thought with a bitter expression. Fuck. This is so annoying. Can't even retain my own name. However, there was nothing that Alex or Shang could do. Anyway, I should first look around for a safe spot. I don't know where I am, and if I start training now, unwelcome visitors might suddenly appear. Alex looked around. There are no leaf trees and only pine trees. Does this mean that I'm in a colder climate? Now that I think about it, the sun is high in the sky, but it's a bit chilly. I can still deal with this temperature, but it will probably drop significantly in the evening and night. I have food for about a day in my sack, and I can use my spare clothes for bedding in a blanket. However, I should still find a safe place where I can sleep. Let's check from above, Alex thought as he looked at a tall tree beside him. With this body, I should be able to climb this tree. Alex put his sack down and went to the tree, but he quickly stopped. Then he slung the sack over his back. Animals might smell the jerky in there, he thought. After that, Alex went to the tree and slung his arms and legs around it. Sure enough, I can easily support my own weight. This body is quite powerful and still pretty light. I don't want to admit it, but this body is probably even better suited for survival and combat than my old one. The first couple of meters were a bit difficult, but after Alex reached the height of the branches, it became far easier. The needles of the pine tree were a bit annoying, but they didn't injure him. Around 2 minutes later, Alex was relatively high up and could see around him. Fuck. Alex thought with gritted teeth. Forest everywhere. Alex was on top of a sea of green. Well, at least I can somewhat make out the terrain. Alex noticed several mountains on the horizon, probably 20 kilometers away or so. According to his estimations, the mountains were probably about 1 kilometer tall on average. Alex turned his head and noticed that the mountains were encircling him from quite a distance. Is this a basin? Alex thought. I can't see anything higher behind the mountains, which probably means that I'm probably not below sea level. I'm probably just surrounded by mountains. Quite an interesting starting location. Alex got an idea, and a skeptical expression appeared on his face. Is this supposed to be some kind of tutorial area or starter location? Alex thought. Alex scratched the back of his head awkwardly when he had that thought. This wasn't a game, but the god sure as hell structured it like one. Alex even got 3 healing potions. I mean, at least this makes things easier, Alex thought. He told me that I should try surviving in the wilderness, and when I no longer feel any danger, I should go further in. I guess he meant this basin. Then Alex noticed something. Smoke. There was smoke coming from behind one of the mountains. It was hard to notice, but if one looked hard enough, one would see it. That's probably a village, and they're living just beyond that mountain. This did a lot for calming Alex's anxiety. At least he knew where he could find humans. Rustle, rustle. Alex heard the sound of rustling coming from a distance, and he looked over. Alex blinked a couple of times in confusion as he tried to process what he was seeing. Were these trees moving? Yes, sure enough, about 100 meters away, about 20 pine trees were moving from left to right. One peculiar thing was that these trees were all very close to each other, even closer than the other trees. On top of that, some of them were slanted at an angle. Alex squinted his eyes as he tried to see what was going on over there. Trees couldn't just move like that. Wait, are these actually trees? Alex thought. After a closer inspection, Alex noticed that these trees only resembled trees. They weren't actually trees. They looked more like green spires with some green spikes coming out from their side. This picture reminded him of something. If these spires were straight, had no spikes and were black. Alex took a deep breath in shock. Is that a green hedgehog? Sure enough, the moving mass of green looked like the back of a hedgehog. However, just how big was this thing? If that's a hedgehog, it means that it's so big that its needles are nearly as tall as pine trees. Alex remained quiet as he watched the mass of green spires moving past the trees. Sometimes they were caught on a tree and bent backward, but after a while, they simply bounced back to their original location. If this was a hedgehog, it was probably just as big as an elephant without its needles. Bang! Suddenly, Alex heard the sound of something heavy hitting the ground, and it sounded like it came from a long distance away. Alex looked towards the direction the sound came from and noticed a dust cloud at the bottom of one of the mountains in the distance. There, Alex noticed a brown lizard biting down on some large, brown animal. Alex wasn't sure since it was too far away to see it clearly. However, Alex did notice one thing. I can see that lizard from here, he thought with a deep breath. Then how big is that lizard? For a while, Alex only remained silent as he tried to come to terms with the things he had witnessed. Are you sure this is a tutorial area? Alex remained on top of the pine tree for quite a while as he simply looked at his surroundings in shock. These beasts are gigantic, Alex thought. How am I supposed to survive here? If I accidentally get close to any of them, I won't even have a fighting chance. Although the god said nothing about killing everything. He simply said that I should remain here until I can survive without feeling much danger. Is this what he meant with sufficient combat experience? I mean, I guess being able to survive in the wilderness could have its own perks. For example, if I ever get chased by anything or anyone, I would be able to survive. These aren't the orchestrated fights I'm used to. These are real life and death battles, which means that fleeing is a viable strategy. I guess being able to flee is a valuable skill. Alex released a sigh. So, should I search for a cave for the night? Alex asked himself. However, these mountains are around 20 kilometers away from here. If it's a straight and safe street, I could probably get there in half a day with the current fitness of my body. However, my journey there won't be safe, and I definitely need to make several turns. Yeah, that doesn't work. So, I need an alternative. Digging is a no-go. After all, I only have a knife. Additionally, the climate is rather cold, which makes the ground harder. On top of that, the ground should be filled with roots. Alex scratched the back of his head. I think that only leaves two things. I either need to find some humongous tree that has a big hole inside it, or I need to sleep on top of trees. Camping outside should be the last option. Alex sighed. Anyway, if I have to sleep on a tree anyway, I don't really have to look for one. These trees are all pretty big and basically any one of them would do. I only need to cut off the needles and annoying branches. Alex looked up. It should be early afternoon, which means I still have some hours to kill. I should keep watch over my surroundings to see what kind of wildlife I can find. Knowing your enemy is already half the battle. Alex started climbing down the tree, but didn't leave it completely. Instead, Alex waited about 5 meters above the ground on a thick branch. He shaved off some of the needles of the tree to make himself comfortable. But wait, didn't Alex say that he would look at the wildlife? Yes, he did, but only an idiot would blindly walk through an unknown forest. This was not Earth. Dangerous animals existed on Earth, but they were not everywhere. Additionally, even if one were in an area known to have dangerous animals, these animals wouldn't be everywhere at once. These powerful animals had territories, and they needed a ton of food. However, here things could be different. Alex wasn't certain how many dangerous animals there were in this basin, but there probably were a few. So Alex simply remained on the tree as he looked down. At the same time, Alex tried to be as silent as possible. Half an hour passed, and Alex's ass had already started hurting from sitting like this. However, waiting like this had paid off. Right now, Alex was so relieved that he hadn't left the tree. Why? Wolf pack. There were 4 light, gray wolves walking around the tree Alex was currently on. They had obviously smelled him, and they very quickly found Alex as his scent led them to the tree. The wolves looked up at Alex, who was looking down nervously. These wolves are normal-sized, but still, they're massive. Alex thought. These wolves were really bigger than their counterparts from Earth, but even the wolves on Earth could weigh up to 90 to 100 kilograms. In comparison, a German shepherd was only around 30 to 40 kilograms. The wolves started circling the tree, and some of them started clawing at the tree with their paws, but the tree was just too massive. Surprisingly, the wolves didn't bark, growl, or howl. Except for the scraping sound of their claws on the tree, they made no other sound. Alex's heart was beating quickly, but his head remained calm. He knew that they couldn't get him up here. Light gray, what an interesting color, Alex thought. Wolves are normally brown or dark gray. I think wolves with these lighter colors are mainly in colder environments, since their color makes it easier to go unnoticed in the snow. This confirms it. This is probably a colder region. After some minutes, the wolves left again. There was no point in remaining here. It was easier to find a different prey. Alex watched the wolves leave with interest. They were suspiciously quiet. If they were the rulers of this place, they wouldn't need to be so quiet. This means that there are probably more terrifying beasts lurking around. Alex got reminded of the gigantic green hedgehog and the brown lizard. Obviously, he added in his thoughts. Alex remained on the tree. Half an hour later, Alex saw another animal, and he certainly didn't like seeing that one. A hog. Alex could only describe the hog's appearance with the word fat. It was nearly as tall as Alex, and it seemed just as wide. Great, a hog, Alex thought sarcastically with an uncomfortable expression. Hogs are fiercely territorial and make a ton of noise when they get angry. The hog also smelled something when it arrived below Alex's tree, but instead of looking up, it was rummaging through the dirt. Surprisingly and contrary to expectation, the hog was quite silent while digging. Luckily, the hog didn't notice Alex and quickly left after a bit of searching around. 10 minutes later, the next animal arrived, and this was an animal that Alex hadn't seen before. It was a sizable green lizard. It was probably nearly a meter high, and it had quite some long legs. Additionally, there were long claws coming out of its long legs. Why are there so many animals here? Alex thought. Isn't it normal to only see one big animal every couple of hours? Yet I'm seeing one every 10 minutes. The green lizard seemingly smelled something of interest, and Alex became more nervous. This thing looked like it could climb trees. The lizard smelled the ground with interest, and after a couple seconds, it walked over to a tree and climbed it. Luckily, it wasn't Alex's tree. When Alex saw that, he silently released a sigh of relief. It probably didn't smell me. Otherwise, it would have climbed my tree. It probably smelled the hog. Alex looked at the tree where the lizard was with interest. While climbing it, Alex could still hear it, but after some rustling, everything became silent again. Its legs don't fit an arboreal animal, Alex thought. It probably walks on the ground normally. Alex had a complex expression on his face. So it's probably on the tree to hunt, right? Alex thought. The tree was still silent, but Alex couldn't see the lizard through all the green needles blocking his sight. I'm so happy that I didn't walk around aimlessly. Even if I managed to evade all the animals on the ground, I might walk by a tree with exactly such a lizard in it, Alex thought. Alex looked over at the tree as he lay down on the branch. He wanted to remain as hidden as possible. Usually Alex might try to kill it. After all, he was supposed to grow stronger and gain combat experience. This was a perfect opponent. It wasn't too big and it was alone. However, Alex decided against it. Why? Because after smelling the hog, the lizard waited here in an ambush instead of going someplace else. That hog had been huge. It probably weighed over 300 kilograms. How was a lizard that barely weighed maybe 50 kilograms supposed to kill that thing alone? Alex decided that the risk was too high. Alex continued waiting, but waiting was much more stressful than before. After all, the lizard was still there. Even worse, Alex had heard nothing from the tree for the past 20 minutes. It was almost like the lizard wasn't there anymore. Another 20 minutes later, something walked past Alex's tree again. Alex glanced down and his heart sank. It wasn't the hog. The 4 wolves were back. Alex became nervous when he saw that the wolves had come back. These wolves knew where Alex was, and if that weird lizard saw how these wolves acted up, it might decide to also attack Alex. The wolves walked around, sniffing the ground. Then they turned their attention to the tree Alex was on and walked over. Alex's heart beat ferociously as he tried to think of something. He wasn't scared of the wolves. After all, these wolves couldn't climb trees. However, he was scared of the lizard. Alex still tried to hide as well as possible. Doing something stupid now might spell his doom. Bang! Alex's eyes widened in horror. What had he just seen? The wolves immediately released short shouts as they jumped away. However, only 3 wolves were left. Why? A fireball had flown over to one of the wolves and had exploded. The wolf's body was partially torn apart, and the explosion of the fireball had thrown it against the tree. Where had the fireball come from? It came from the tree where the lizard was supposed to be. The remaining 3 wolves immediately scattered into all directions, fearful of whatever it was that had killed one of their companions. The last wolf was barely clinging to life, but to no avail. Even if nothing else attacked it anymore, it would still die. Alex still could barely believe what he had just seen. Had the lizard fired a fireball? Was that why it was so confident in taking on the hog? Then, Alex saw the lizard slithering down from its tree as it walked over to the half-dead wolf with its long legs. Snap! The lizard bit down on the wolf's neck, suffocating it slowly. Silence. Alex saw how the lizard was dealing with the wolf just beside his tree, and Alex became a bit agitated. If he jumped down now, he could take out the lizard and claim both corpses for himself. Alex had enough food for a day, but he would need to survive for longer. Food was a pressing issue for him right now. Alex readied his survival knife as he debated if he should jump down or not. By now, the wolf was no longer moving, but the lizard wanted to make sure that the wolf was dead. Because of that, the lizard continued strangling the wolf. Alex continued hesitating. Alex readied his knife, and then he put it away. The lizard was too dangerous. If the lizard had the ability to shoot fireballs, it might have different abilities as well. Maybe its scales were incredibly powerful. Maybe its body was far more powerful than it appeared. There were too many unknowns about this lizard. Crash! Suddenly, Alex heard something crash through a bush and he looked over. One of the wolves was back, and it was charging directly at the lizard. Alex also quickly noticed that the 2 other wolves were also charging at the lizard from different sides. They've assessed the danger from a distance and decided that they should try to kill the lizard, Alex thought with narrowed eyes. This might be my chance to get some food. The first wolf directly charged at the lizard with its full speed, which was quite impressive. The lizard suddenly hissed loudly as it showed its fangs to the approaching wolf. Alex noticed this and quickly made several deductions in his head. If the lizard could quickly kill the approaching wolf, there would be no point in threatening it. This meant that the lizard might have been weakened by the attack it had unleashed previously. Maybe the lizard's fireball was similar to a snake's bite? Snakes use their venom only sparingly since it took a lot of energy to create more of it. Bang! However, the wolf received another fireball to the face. This time, Alex had seen the fireball clearly. The fireball had only been about 5 centimeters across, but it had shot at the wolf with quite some speed. When the fireball hit the wolf, it exploded ferociously. Half of the wolf's head was destroyed, making it fall to the ground, convulsing. However, something surprising happened. The other 2 wolves didn't let up. This shocked Alex. 2 of their comrades had already died. So, why were they so adamant about taking down the lizard? This wasn't how normal wild animals behaved. The other two wolves reached the lizard, and it sprang back with a violent and shrill hiss. Then, chaos broke out. The two wolves violently attacked the lizard as it tried to defend itself with its long claws, tail, and teeth. It can't unleash fireballs anymore, Alex noticed. The lizard was quite powerful. Every single bite from it echoed throughout the clearing. Its scales also gave it a considerable defense against any attacks. Whenever a wolf bit it, their teeth only barely managed to penetrate the scales. Yet the two wolves were faster and more agile. They simply placed themselves at opposite sides of the lizard. Whenever the lizard turned to one wolf, the other one would bite its tail. Alex readied himself. Alex's heartbeat climbed to ferocious heights. Alex had been in a ton of fights in his life, but no fight had been a genuine life and death battle until the very last moment of his previous life. Alex knew that he was about to risk his life to take another. Creak. The branch Alex was currently on creaked as Alex stood up. Yet, the sound of the branch went unheard due to the commotion going on below him. Then, Alex jumped. Time seemingly stopped for Alex as he fell down. Nothing below him moved anymore as seconds seemed to take forever to pass. Crack! Alex landed on top of the wolf with his knees, and he immediately heard and felt a brutal crack. Luckily, this crack didn't come from his own body. The wolf quickly fell to the side due to the force of Alex's fall, and Alex's knee traveled to the wolf's rib cage due to the new angle. Crack! The rib cage gave way beneath Alex's knee, and Alex felt the force of the fall hit his own body. Luckily, his body was fit enough to resist a fall from just a couple meters. Alex's body was filled with adrenaline, and he immediately grabbed his survival knife and rammed it into the wolf's neck. The knife went into the wolf's neck like it didn't even exist. Obviously, the knife was not of inferior quality. CRSH. Alex immediately pulled the knife out from the side, severing the front of the wolf's neck. While all of this was happening, Alex was keeping tabs on the other two living beings in the area. The other wolf had immediately run away as soon as it saw that it was alone. The lizard chased it for a couple of meters, hissing the entire time. While Alex was still dealing with the wolf under him, the lizard turned back and looked at him, hissing. Alex looked into the lizard's eyes as the wolf died beneath his feet. Then they only stared at each other for 5 seconds. By now, the wolf's body only convulsed weakly, not being able to do anything else. Alex slowly stood up and grabbed the wolf's legs. CRRRRRR. The sound of something scraping across the ground was heard as Alex pulled the wolf towards his tree. The lizard continued hissing at Alex while he was doing that. Then the lizard charged at Alex. Thunk. Alex dropped the wolf and charged at the lizard. CRK. Hiss. The lizard suddenly stopped its charge as it resumed its hissing. When Alex saw that the lizard had stopped its charge, Alex also stopped. They stared at each other for several more seconds. The lizard had tried to frighten Alex into running away, and Alex had called that bluff. Alex slowly walked back to his prey, looking at the lizard. The lizard continued hissing, but after a couple of seconds, it seemed to calm down. It slowly walked over to its most recent kill and bit down on one of the corpse's legs, looking at Alex the entire time. Then the lizard pulled the corpse away. Alex only continued looking at the lizard. A couple seconds later, the lizard suddenly changed its hold, bit on the wolf's neck, heaved it up in one motion, and ran away with impressive speed. Sure enough, this lizard isn't simple, Alex thought with narrowed eyes. It should only weigh about 50 kilograms, but it straight up lifted the about 80 kilograms wolf and ran off with it. Surprisingly, it left behind the other corpse. Silence returned to the clearing. Alex was slowly calming down as the thick scent of blood appeared in his nose, making him wrinkle his nose. Then Alex started feeling pain coming from his right knee. He moved his leg around a bit, and it felt like his knee was burning. Luckily, no bones were loose and Alex could still move it without problems. It simply hurt a lot. This means my knee isn't broken. Lucky. Alex looked at the darkening sky with narrowed eyes. No time to think about my first kill. I need to bring the corpse to a safe place. Alex looked at his tree. Up the tree would be best. Then Alex looked at the bleeding corpse. Yet, how do I get it up there? Alex glanced at the horizon and noted that the sun was barely visible. It's already sundown. I'm not sure what manner of creatures travel around at night in this forest, but I don't want to be on the ground while night's out. Alex grabbed the wolf's corpse and lifted it. It was really heavy, but he barely managed to lift it up to his chest. However, it was very exhausting. Then Alex looked at the branches above him. The lowest branch that could support the weight of the wolf was a full meter above him. I might be able to lift the corpse over my head, but I sure as hell can't throw it up there. Jumping is also out of the question. It's simply too heavy. I need an alternative, Alex thought as he put the corpse down again. Alex paced around as he tried to think of a solution. The forest darkened more as time passed, and Alex became more nervous. By now, the birds had become silent, making the forest appear deathly silent. Even the constant buzzing of the insects became quieter until it eventually stopped. Right now, the only noise in the forest was Alex's footsteps. Then, Alex looked up at the bag in his tree. I have to try it. I can't waste this corpse. Alex quickly climbed up the tree and got his bag. After opening it, Alex took out all his spare clothes and tied them together. Luckily, he had enough clothes to make quite a long line. If old-timey prisoners can use something like this to escape from prisons, I can use it to pull up a corpse. Alex tied his makeshift rope to the chest of the wolf. Then Alex climbed up to the first branch of the tree and let himself fall down at the other side, holding the rope. CRRR. The rope became taut, and Alex feared that it might snap. CRRR. The wolf corpse slightly moved upward but stopped. I'm not heavy enough. Alex climbed up the rope, happy that his body was fit enough to do something like that. Then Alex tugged the rope under his arm and put his feet on the branch. After that, Alex pushed himself off the branch. CRRR. Thunk. The corpse moved upwards, but one of the knots loosened. The wolf hit the ground, and Alex also fell down. Luckily, he managed to protect his head with his arms. He only received a couple of bruises. The falling corpse echoed throughout the forest, making Alex even more nervous. With the current silence of the forest, that sound should have traveled for over 100 meters. However, Alex didn't want to give up on the corpse. Food was a necessity. Alex repaired the rope and tried again, and this time no knots loosened. Alex made sure of that. Later one day, 4 be later 2 1 2 a, later one day, 4 e later 1 day 4 c 3 later 1 d 4 if 8 later 1 day 4 c later 2 1 2 if. Later one day 4 c later 1 day 4 f at later 1 d 4 c 2. After the corpse was lifted to a good height, Alex climbed up the branch and pulled up the remaining part. His arms hurt and burned, but he didn't have to pull much since the corpse was already pretty high up. Just when he thought that he had to drop the corpse, he managed to grab it with his arms and finished the last pull upward. The branch was creaking under the combined weight of Alex and the corpse, and Alex decided to quickly switch branches. If that branch broke, all his work would have been for nothing. Then Alex sat down at a different branch and breathed heavily as he moved his cramped fingers. Parts of the skin on his fingers had been nearly shorn off, making them bleed a little bit. However, such an injury would heal very quickly. I hope this was worth it, Alex thought. As Alex relaxed, he felt his body starting to shiver. It's cold, he thought. It might even reach below freezing later in the night. Alex narrowed his eyes as he looked at the corpse and the makeshift rope. Then he climbed to the other branch, being careful to not break it. After getting the rope, Alex released the knots and put parts of his clothes on a higher branch, making a makeshift mattress. Alex put the other half of the clothes to the side for now. He would make them into a blanket later. When everything was done, Alex simply sat on his branch, thinking. The issue of food has been solved for now. The issue of warmth should be solved until the weather becomes even colder, which it surely will. What about water? Alex looked at the corpse of the wolf that was bleeding onto the ground. Alex's body shivered. I'm not so desperate yet. I can think about drinking blood when I'm about to die of thirst. Then Alex released a sigh. This should be enough for the day, he thought. I should start my expedition tomorrow. Right now, I only need to rest. Alex grabbed the remainder of his now dirty clothes and wrapped them around himself as he lay down on the branch. It certainly wasn't comfortable. I need to sleep, he thought, closing his eyes. Minutes passed as the events of the day shot through his head. In just a single day, he had died, met a god, went to a new world with a new body, and killed an animal. For the first time, the reality that he would never see his family again hit home. Have you already heard of my death, Mom, Dad? Alex thought with pain. Do you think I'm in some kind of paradise now? Time passed as Alex's thoughts wandered. An hour later, no light of the sun reached this place anymore. However, it wasn't as dark as one thought. Why? Because the moon was close to becoming a full moon. The moon cycle wasn't completely there yet, but it was close. The moon illuminated the dark forest, creating foreboding shadows. When a cold wind blew, these shadows moved in an ominous dance in accordance with the cold whistle of the wind. Drip, drip, drip. The only sounds besides the rustling of the leaves and the whistle of the wind were the drops of blood from the corpse hitting the ground. Then another sound joined in. It was Alex sitting up on the branch with furrowed brows. I'm not tired, he thought. So much stuff has happened that my mind just can't calm down. I need to do something to distract myself. Alex sat on his makeshift mattress while his body was wrapped in clothing, looking at the ground. The grass had a silver sheen to it as it was illuminated by the moonlight. Alex just sat there. Drip, drip, drip. The conversation with the god rang through Alex's mind. Then he narrowed his eyes. He said that absorbing the mana in the air can strengthen me and heal my injuries. I can't train my body right now, but I should be able to do that at least. Then Alex closed his eyes as he sat on the branch. There has to be some way to feel the mana in the air, and there also has to be a way to absorb it. As Alex sat on the branch with closed eyes, he concentrated on the wind. Was there something in the atmosphere? If there was, Alex should be able to feel it in the wind. Drip, drip, drip. The sounds of dripping blood, the whistling wind, and rustling leaves were the only things that could be heard in the forest. Other than that, there was no sound. The rhythmic sounds slowly put Alex in some kind of trance as he felt his mind drifting. He felt like he was touching something fundamental. After a while, his skin started tickling as Alex felt some of his hair stand up. Yes, there was something else in the air. It was hard to describe, but there was something new in the air. Earth didn't have anything like this, which made this force that much more pronounced. As Alex connected with the force, he felt it slowly enter his body. It felt warm. It was like Alex was taking a relaxing bath. Alex slowly touched his skin, but it was still cold. The feeling of warmth was apparently only spiritual, not physical. Slowly, Alex's mind started to vanish as he fell into a kind of half-sleep. However, the mana in the air still entered his body. Drip, 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 drrrrr. Alex woke up with a start as an unknown sound joined the sounds of the forest. Alex looked over at the origin of the sound and realized that his backpack was shaking slightly. He moved over and opened the backpack as silently as possible to investigate the sound. After some seconds, he found it. It was the black cube, the thing that was supposed to be his future weapon. Drip, drip, drip. Alex looked at the slightly vibrating cube with interest. Why is it shaking? Drrrr, drrrr. Alex furrowed his eyebrows. The shaking kind of sounded urgent. Drip, drip, splat. Alex's eyes widened, and he looked towards the ground. The forest grew darker as it seemingly transformed into a land of death. The moonlight vanished from Alex's eyes as he beheld the thing standing below the corpse of the wolf. It was a being that looked like some sort of panther. However, it had incredibly long forelegs that ended in long claws. This build made it appear more like the thing was pulling itself forward with its forelegs instead of pushing itself with its hind legs. It was black as the night and it had white eyes. The most recent drop of blood from the wolf's corpse hadn't hit the ground but the creature's head. All of these things were already terrifying, but there were 3 more aspects about it that were even more terrifying. One aspect was its sheer size. It was nearly 2 meters high and probably over 4 meters long. It was bigger than a tiger. Another aspect was that it had appeared down there without a sound. If it hadn't been hit by the last drop of blood, Alex wouldn't have noticed this gigantic thing below his tree. It was as silent as the night. And the last aspect? The last aspect was the most terrifying of all. The last aspect was that the creature was facing Alex, looking into his eyes. Time froze for Alex. He only looked into the blank, white eyes of the creature. Yes, this was a creature, not an animal. Just looking at it filled Alex with terror. This thing differed greatly from a normal animal. Alex wasn't sure what exactly it was, but he felt a definite difference. The green lizard had also felt different from normal animals, and this creature evoked a similar feeling as the lizard. However, this creature felt far more powerful and far deadlier. It was like the lizard and the creature were not on the same level. An eternity seemed to pass as the two beings only looked at each other. Sage! Time resumed as the creature suddenly jumped at Alex with ferocious speed. The jump made no sound. One could only hear something fast parting the air, nothing more. Alex's body reacted instinctively and Alex let himself fall away from the branch, putting the branch between him and the creature. Bang! The creature's left foreleg completely destroyed the thick branch that had been powerful enough to support Alex's full weight for hours. CRH! Alex felt a burning pain assault the back of his thighs as muscles and blood were ripped out. The creature had torn off a huge part of Alex's thigh. If the branch hadn't been between them, his legs would have been completely destroyed. Bang! Alex's back hit the ground, pressuring his lungs, making it impossible to breathe. CRH! The silent sound of wood being crushed could be heard as the creature used its long claws to stick to the tree. Right now, Alex lay on the ground, not being able to breathe. His right thigh had a gigantic gash in it. Meanwhile, the creature stopped in the tree and looked at Alex. Then, it jumped again. Alex's mind fell into chaos. For a seemingly long time, his mind couldn't conjure up any rational thoughts as he tried to find a way out of this situation. The distance between Alex and the creature reduced rapidly as the creature opened its mouth, filled with long, terrifying teeth. When Alex saw the teeth, only two thoughts appeared in his head. The first thought was, protect. Alex's hands stretched towards the creature in a futile effort to defend himself. The second thought was, weapon. The image of many weapons shot through Alex's mind, but his mind subconsciously fixated on the image of a sword. The creature reached Alex and bit down. Shing! Time stopped again. Alex looked with terror at his front, right into the creature's white eyes. He was still alive. Alex quickly noticed why he was still alive. A black sword had materialized in Alex's right hand, and the black sword had impaled the creature's head. The creature was already dead. The sword had gone through its brain. The creature had already stopped its own fall before it had tried to bite Alex. Because of that, its weight hadn't pushed Alex away. Several seconds of silence passed. Herg. Alex was finally able to breathe again as his lung recovered from the fall. Alex only looked with shock at the creature, trying to come to terms with the fact that he had survived. Several seconds later, Alex pulled himself away and pulled the sword out of the creature's head. Shing! Then Alex only looked at the sword. In Alex's desperation, his mind had subconsciously conjured a long and sharp weapon that could be used in one hand. The black cube transformed into a weapon fitting the criteria. Under the moonlight, Alex saw the weapon that would follow him for the rest of his life. The first thought that came to Alex was long. The sword was a bit over a meter long, putting it among the longer swords. The second thought was thin. The sword was straight as a nail and thin. Yet, it had two symmetrical edges separating it from Eastern longswords like katanas. In short, Alex's sword looked like a longer, straight rapier with two edges. One could also say that it looked like a thinner European longsword, but with the same width all the way through. However, its guard was nearly non-existent, comprising of just a tiny rectangle. Alex inspected his weapon as he slowly calmed down. It looks fragile, Alex thought as he furrowed his brows. Such a thin sword would break apart after only a single clash with an actual one. Alex's hand started to shake. However, it's heavy. It's even hard to just hold it in my right hand like this. Alex put the sword down, and its tip slightly cut into the earth. Under the shining moonlight, Alex continued to look at the sword. However, the more he looked at it, the better it seemed. Actually, I shouldn't impose the logic of my own world into this new world, Alex thought. The guy said that this sword can grow more powerful by absorbing ore. Additionally, I'm not sure if there even exists a material in my old world that can become this heavy with only this bit of volume. Alex's narrowed eyes suddenly had a glint of excitement in them. Actually, if swordsmiths had access to such powerful materials, they might not have made all their swords that thick to begin with. It's already hard enough to wield this sword even though it's that thin. I should test it. Then Alex stood up. Arg! However, he failed as he sat down again. Alex had forgotten that the backside of his right thigh was ravaged. As soon as he had tried to stand up, burning pain shot throughout his whole body. Under immense pain, Alex moved his body as he inspected his thigh. When Alex saw the injury, he took a deep breath through gritted teeth. The gash was massive. He could even see his own bone. I need to drink the healing potions in my bag. Alex looked up at the tree but remembered that his branch had been completely obliterated. After looking around the area for a bit, Alex finally spotted his bag under the dim moonlight. Alex crawled over, constantly being assaulted by pain. A minute later he arrived beside his back and rummaged through it. However, when he looked into the bag, a shiver went through his body. The bag was wet and some red liquid was swimming in the bag. The glass bottles holding the 3 healing potions had shattered. Fuck! Alex pulled everything solid out of the bag, including the glass splinters. Then he put the bag to his mouth and tried to drink the red liquid in the bottle through his gritted teeth. He did this so that no glass splinters entered his body. It was disgusting. The dirt and dust of the bag mixed with the red liquid, nearly forcing Alex to puke. However, he forced himself through it. Back. When he was done, Alex threw the bag to the side with disgust. Suddenly, Alex felt a burning pain shooting throughout his body as the sound of something burning appeared. 10 seconds later, the sensation disappeared, and Alex took a deep breath. Then Alex inspected his thigh, and his eyes widened when he saw it. The wound was gone. It was completely gone. It was like it had never been there to begin with. Alex had expected the red liquid to be some kind of healing potion, but he hadn't expected it to be this effective. Sure enough, anything that a god bestows upon someone can't be simple. Alex tried to stand up, and it went without a hitch. It was like he had never been injured. However, Alex looked at his bag one last time with regret. I had 3 of those, but now all of them are gone, he thought with lament. Sadly, there was nothing that Alex could do. So he gathered all his belongings, including his new sword, and climbed up the tree again. He would test out his new sword tomorrow. As soon as he got to a new branch, Alex sat down and his eyelids started to fall. Now Alex was truly tired. Alex threw one last glance at the massive corpse on the ground, still in disbelief that he had killed such a monster. That thing has to weigh at least 200 kilograms. No matter how hard I'll try, I'll never pull it up the tree. Letter 1 day, 4 if later, 1 day 4, 5 2 letter 1 day 4 5. 1 letter 1 day, 4 5 be later 1 day, 6. 3 0 letter 1 day, 4 6. 3 dot letter 1 day, 4 5 0 letter 1 day 4 5 C letter 1 day 4 5 a. Sadly, this means that it has to remain on the ground. Alex readied his makeshift bed and laid down. He put his sword over his body to keep himself from turning and subsequently falling to the ground. The weight of the sword put a lot of pressure on him. Additionally, having such a sharp object near him made him nervous about moving. However, safety was more important than comfort. Surprisingly, even under such uncomfortable bedding, sleep came quickly. Alex only hoped that there wouldn't appear another surprise this night. And thus Alex slept in the new world for the first time. Alex slowly opened his eyes after an undefined amount of time. At first, Alex shot up in confusion as he saw his unfamiliar surroundings. However, Alex quickly calmed down as he remembered the last day. Right, I'm not on Earth anymore, Alex thought with a sigh. I thought all of this had only been a dream, but apparently it wasn't. A wave of melancholy washed over Alex. He would never see his home again. He would never see his family again. However, Alex's thoughts were stopped as his stomach told him that he should eat something. Should I eat some of the jerky? Alex thought. No, I don't think so. Jerky stays fresh for longer than raw meat. I should keep it for times when I'm actually lacking food. Alex slowly sat up on his branch, and an uncomfortable, stiff pain assaulted him. Oh God, Alex thought as he touched his back and shoulders. Everything's stiff. Alex moved his muscles around while looking at the surroundings. It was already pretty bright. Alex guessed that it was probably around 10 a.m. After loosening up for a couple of minutes, Alex jumped down and walked over to the corpse of the creature from the past night. When Alex saw its corpse, he had to take a deep breath again. Did I really kill that? He thought. Even in death, the creature appeared fearsome and imposing. Anyway, I should make use of its corpse. Who knows, such powerful beasts might have some kind of benefit to the body. I'm not on Earth anymore, so it's possible. Alex moved towards the creature while dragging his heavy but thin sword behind him. Alex inspected the corpse for a couple of minutes, trying to think of as many ways to use it as possible. Meat for food, hide for warm clothing, maybe bones for tools. Alex nodded. Anyways, I should be patient first. I don't know when the next animal will appear in the clearing. Alex postponed the butchering of the corpse and went back to the tree. Then he simply waited. It was important to see how many beasts approached this area. Yet, surprisingly, the next 3 hours, not a single animal appeared. Alex furrowed his brows. It's nearly afternoon, but I haven't seen a single animal. I saw plenty of animals yesterday, but not a single one appeared. I don't think that they only hunt in the evening. Alex had a guess as to why no beasts arrived, but he had to make sure. Alex left his tree and walked to a different one about 200 meters away. Then Alex climbed on top of that tree and kept watch again. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, Alex saw a stag. The stag carefully moved forward, watching its surroundings with great care. It was on its way to the corpse of the creature. Yet it suddenly stopped as its nose took several deep whiffs. Then the stag turned around and walked in a different direction, silently but with more hurry. Alex smirked. Knew it. The herbivores can probably smell the terrifying odor of the creature, and their instincts tell them to avoid this area. Alex looked in the direction of the corpse. Does this also work for carnivores? If we were on Earth, I would doubt that. A dead animal is a dead animal, but who knows, maybe it's different here. Alex decided to wait longer, and a little more than an hour later, a lone tiger appeared. Alex took a deep breath when he saw the tiger. What are tigers doing here? He thought. Aren't tigers normally in warmer climates? Although, I've heard of snow leopards. So, maybe there are also big cats in cold climates? However, Alex's eyes quickly widened with a gleam when he saw that the tiger also avoided walking towards the corpse. Interesting, Alex thought as he scratched his chin in thought. A tiger should be an apex predator on Earth. There's nothing on Earth that can make a tiger avoid a part of its forest, except for maybe human settlements. Alex thought back about his encounter with the creature last night. He could understand why the tiger avoided this place. Tigers were powerful, and they could jump for several meters with some preparation. However, that thing yesterday had immediately jumped nearly 5 meters straight into the air. On top of that, the power of its forelegs had been so great that it tore apart the branch Alex had been sitting on like it had been nothing. Tigers were powerful, but not that powerful. Well, if there are infinite ways to reach supreme power as a human, animals can probably become just as powerful. After the tiger left, Alex came down from the tree and walked back to his old location. The corpse was still there and no other animal had arrived. This time, Alex looked at the corpse more closely. It should weigh about 200 kilograms. I think a tiger is also about that heavy, maybe even heavier. Yet, The physical power of this creature far outweighs the physical power of a tiger. Alex scratched his chin with furrowed brows. Is this the difference between the normal animals and this creature? Normal animals are just like normal humans. In comparison, this creature had already stepped onto the path of power. Alex also remembered the green lizard, which had the uncanny ability to shoot a fireball. I think the lizard had also already stepped onto the path to power. Otherwise, I can't find an explanation for the ability to straight up shoot a fireball. Even if it had some kind of chemical mixture in its body that allowed it to create fire, just spitting the fire would completely burn its mouth every time. So, either the lizard's body has some kind of illogical heightened fire resistance, or it created fire a different way. Alex remembered his conversation with the god of this world. The guy said that this world is filled with mages. Apparently, mages can manipulate the mana in the air to harness the destructive forces of nature. Fire should be part of these forces. Alex nodded. I can imagine the lizard doing something similar. Alex's eyes shone with a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and wonder. I also want to do that. However, that has to wait for now, Alex thought as he straightened his body. Survival comes first. First, I need water, food, and warmth. I can get a fire going and cook some meat. While the meat is cooking, I can also try to make some kind of long coat out of the creature's fur for warmth. The animals are currently avoiding this area, and I should use the chance. Alex looked towards the distance. I only hope that no beast walks over here that is interested in the corpse of the creature. I only managed to kill the creature due to luck. If I meet it again, it might tear me apart. After all, yesterday, it hadn't seen my sword since it hadn't actually existed yet. However, now the creature would be able to see my sword. Avoiding it isn't probably very hard for such a creature. Alex gathered some dried twigs and some leaves. Then he tried to start a fire. It definitely wasn't as easy as it appeared on TV, but Alex managed to get a fire going after about an hour of trying. When he saw the twigs catch fire, Alex felt so incredibly relieved. Then Alex took out his sword and carefully cut off the gigantic pelt of the creature. It was an extremely bloody affair, and the corpse stank to high heaven. Luckily, Alex's sword was insanely sharp, making the task far easier. After that, Alex cut off several chunks of the creature's right foreleg and hung them close to the fire on some sticks. While the meat was being cooked, Alex scraped the remaining blood and meat off his pelt. I think the difference between a hide and actual leather is drying, right? Alex thought. Alex scratched the back of his neck, uncertain if that was true. In the end, he made some small holes in the hide and hung it close by the fire with several branches. It took nearly an hour, and a lot of branches broke, but Alex managed it in the end. Alex checked on the meat and rotated it. That should still take about an hour. For a while, Alex only sat beside the fire, listening to its relaxing crackling. I could try training my body, Alex thought. However, I don't have anything to drink. I'm already quite thirsty, and training will dry me out even faster. Alex scratched his chin for a bit. Then he went to a tree and climbed up. When he reached the crown, Alex scanned the horizon. It smells a bit like rain, and I see some dark clouds on the horizon. I don't think water will be an issue in like an hour or so. Alex smirked as he quickly descended the tree. Well, time to do some training. Alex descended the tree and mentally prepared himself for his first training session in this new world. The god had told Alex that he should destroy his body as thoroughly as possible with training, and then use meditation to enhance his body with mana. Nothing out of the ordinary would happen if someone told something like this to a newbie regarding sports. Why? Because if someone didn't have enough experience in physical exercise, their willpower and resistance to physical pain wouldn't be strong enough to really damage their muscles. When a newbie regarding sports trained until they couldn't anymore, their muscles wouldn't receive too much damage since the body's self-preservation instinct kicked in. The person would feel like they couldn't continue, but someone that had trained themselves for longer could go further. Alex was a bit apprehensive about the god's words. Alex had trained his body to such a degree that he had even managed to join the biggest MMA organization in the world. It wouldn't be an overstatement to say that Alex had once had a body that was normally only seen on TV, and well, it made sense. After all, Alex's fights had also been broadcast on TV. Because of that, if Alex decided to go all out with his training, he had the willpower to actually train his body until even his tendons snapped. Of course, he had never done something like that before, since it was stupid beyond belief to do that. But this world is different, Alex thought as he scratched his chin. If the mana in the atmosphere has some kind of healing and strengthening effect on even tendons, training until my tendons snap might actually have an even greater effect. Alex looked at the forest with a conflicted expression. Yet, what if mana actually doesn't help in healing such injuries? What if it helps, but it takes several days for it to heal something like that? I would be helpless during that time. I mean, I could try it in a village where I'm safe, but here, not sure. Alex sighed. I should start slowly. Let's first get an above average workout in. Let's go until I would be wrecked with soreness for the next couple of days. Alex mentally prepared himself for training, something he hadn't done in a long time. Alex felt himself become more energetic and powerful as his brain sent signals to his body to prepare itself for a stressful time. Then, Alex did something surprising. He took off all his clothes. I will be plenty warm when I train, and I don't want my clothes to reek of sweat. Alex made several of his joints crack as he jumped up and down a bit. All right, let's go. And thus Alex's first training session began. He took about 10 minutes to warm up by running, jumping, falling to the ground, standing up, pulling himself up on branches, and doing lots of other things. Alex hadn't trained in a long time, but as soon as his training actually began, he felt like no time had passed since his last session. Usually, I would only do some muscle groups, but today, I'm doing all of them. Alex grabbed his sword and used it as a makeshift weight. After all, it was quite heavy. He put it on his shoulders, stood on the tip of his toes, went back to standing normally, went back to the tip of his toes, and so on. This trained the calves. Then he did squats with the sword. This trained the thighs. Alex was experienced enough to know what kind of movement would train what kind of muscles. Since this was an intense training session, Alex planned to make it a really long one. About 1 hour after Alex started training, the rain had arrived. Alex ignored the fire and the food. If the fire went out, it went out, and the meat could still be eaten when it was cold. It should be cooked by now anyway. However, Alex grabbed his bag and cleaned it. After that, he dug a small hole in the form of a bucket and put the bag inside it. He had remembered that when his healing potions broke, they had made the bag wet, but most of the liquid had still remained inside. This meant that the bag could hold water to some degree. Alex's clothes had been put at a relatively dry place on his tree. It took an entire 90 minutes until Alex had finished training his legs, and he already felt quite a bit of soreness. This was the point where he would normally stop training his legs when he had been on Earth. For safety's sake, Alex also stopped training his legs at this point. He had to check the usage of the mana first. Next, Alex trained his arms and shoulders. As Alex continued training, he felt some kind of primal feeling. He hadn't been sure where that feeling had come from initially, but he quickly found out. He was training in the wilderness, away from any kind of responsibility, family, public image, work, and so on. Only the rain drenching his body and the rough wilderness surrounded him. He had to do nothing but train. Training was his only responsibility. Nothing else mattered. There was no job he had to go back to. There was no money he had to worry about. He didn't have to wake up and go to work. He just had to grow more powerful. In Alex's mind, the training seemingly transformed from an exercise into some form of spiritual cultivation. Alex felt like this was the most primal and most fundamental truth of the world. Just power, nothing else. After 90 minutes, Alex was done with his arms and shoulders. Lastly, Alex focused on his abdomen, chest, and back. This took 60 minutes. Then Alex was finally done. He had trained for 4 full hours, and he felt as alive as never before. These new surroundings had given Alex an incredible boost in energy, and training under the rain had been a bit weird at the beginning, but Alex had grown to love training in the rain. It kept him cool, and the sensations of the raindrops had been almost hypnotic. Alex took one more deep breath as he slowly cooled down from his training. A couple minutes later, Alex realized that his mind wasn't as focused anymore. He hadn't eaten much since yesterday, and he was severely dehydrated. Alex checked on the bag and saw that it was full of water. Sadly, the water wasn't pure at all. It had a brownish tint to it. I can't be choosy now. Alex drank the brownish water. It definitely wasn't tasting good, but the cool sensation of the water running down his dry throat was great nonetheless. Then Alex went over to the fireplace. The fire had long been extinguished, and the meat was dripping with water from the rain. However, Alex still grabbed the meat and consumed it. It was missing a lot of seasoning, and it wasn't cooked well, but eating it like this awakened a special primal feeling in Alex. Surprisingly, the meat tasted rather good. It was quite tough, but it had a really strong taste, similar to game. Alex could have finished all of it, but he stopped himself. It was important to not overfeed himself, or his concentration would wane while meditating. After Alex was finished eating and drinking some more, he sat down near his tree and put the sword beside him. Then he closed his eyes and concentrated on the surroundings. Surprisingly, the sound of the rain wasn't distracting. In actuality, it was helping Alex in getting in tune with his surroundings. After some minutes passed, Alex felt a kind of mysterious force in the air, and he was sure that he had never felt anything like this on Earth. This was new. This had to be mana. Alex concentrated on the mana and tried to pull at it with his mind. It took some getting used to, but after around half an hour Alex had become quite good at pulling the mana into himself. Alex imagined himself as a black hole that pulled everything in its surroundings into itself. Letter 1D, 6 to 3 letter 1D, 6 to 6 letter 1D, 6 to 5 letter 1D, 6 to letter 1D, 6. 30 letter 1D 46, 3 dot letter 1D 6, 30 letter 1D 6, 3 letter 1D 6 to 8. He had to absorb everything that touched him. The earth, wood, air, and other forms of matter didn't move, obviously, but since Alex's mind was able to manipulate the mana to some degree, the mana flowed into Alex's body. As soon as the force entered Alex's body, he felt his muscles become warm but not hot. It felt nice and relaxing. It was like Alex was taking a bath. Like this, 3 more hours passed. The sun went over the horizon, and by now, night had arrived. Alex opened his eyes. He had to be careful now. Alex slowly stood up, and as soon as he did, his eyes widened. Alex looked down at his body with wonder. My muscles, they feel fine. Alex thought with shock. Alex moved his body around and did some light, basic exercises to test his body. Sure enough, he felt completely fine. It was like he hadn't just trained for 4 hours. As Alex looked at his body with shock, the realization that this world was nothing like this previous one really set in for the first time. Alex had done enough sports on Earth to know exactly how he should be feeling right now. Yet, not even the slightest feeling of weakness was present. The feeling of weakness while doing the workout comes from the built-up lactic acid. But after such a long resting period, the lactic acid has already vanished. The feeling of weakness after that comes from the small, torn muscle fibers. So, since this feeling isn't present, does it mean that my muscle fibers have already healed? Alex thought with surprise. Have I already gone through the recovery phase? Alex tried to comprehend his current situation. He was even more shocked by this revelation than when he had seen the giant hedgehog. Why? Because Alex knew exactly how insane this was. Alex remembered a gaming term from his past life. This was broken. So, I can literally give my entire body several workouts each day? However, Alex's feeling of shock and exhilaration quickly vanished. Why? Because Alex's mind was going to a dangerous place. Theoretically, the more damaged the muscle, the stronger it will become. Problem on Earth is that the recovery period for such damage would be so long that it wouldn't be nearly as efficient as training normally. But here, I'm not even sure if the power increase comes from the workout or the absorbed mana. It could be that I only need to damage my muscles to make them absorb more mana. I might not need to do actual, traditional training. Alex's eyes focused on his left arm, and he felt a complex mix of feelings. Anticipation, nervousness, fear, curiosity, greed. Was Alex a normal human? When living in a normal environment, sure, he could be called normal. However, if he would remain normal while being flung into a new world, the god wouldn't have chosen him to enter his world. After all, that would have been boring. It has been 3 days since Alex had started training his body, and he had made quite a lot of progress. The masochistic training had been hard to handle in the beginning, but Alex slowly got used to it after literally jumping over his shadow multiple times. After the first couple of jumps, Alex didn't want to feel any more pain. It was just too much. However, after he saw a visible improvement in his strength, he forced himself to continue. The taste of power was just too enticing. However, on this day, he would have to abort his training. Alex had run out of water, and the beast he had killed had started to get infested by insects. Due to the cold climate, the meat was still edible, but the insects inside the corpse were simply too disgusting. On top of that, the smell of the beast was slowly vanishing, and Alex had already seen a deer coming into his visual range before it fled after seeing him. 3 days ago, no animals had appeared close to this place. This meant that Alex was no longer safe. Thunk, thunk. Alex jumped to the tree and shot himself upward again with his legs, grabbing the lowest branch. 3 days ago, Alex wouldn't have been able to do something like this. The growth of his physical power was terrifying. Right now, Alex's body was even more powerful than his old body had been at its peak. Mana made a huge difference in the speed of Alex's improvement. Alex quickly climbed the tree and looked around. There were so many animals in this forest, so there had to be some kind of water source. However, due to the trees, Alex couldn't see the ground from up here, making it difficult to spot any water source. Alex could only check for spots with fewer trees. Alex found a couple of them and decided to investigate. At the same time, Alex would also search for more food. Bang! Alex climbed down from the tree and jumped the last bit, not receiving an injury. Well, I guess it's time to investigate, Alex thought with a frown. This would be the first time he would truly leave this place, and he didn't know what would wait for him. He only hoped that similarly powerful creatures like that monster he had killed by luck were rare. Otherwise, he might die. Alex grabbed his dirty clothes, his backpack, and his sword. Lastly, he put a gigantic black coat around his body, hiding his sword. This coat was made of the creature's fur, and it had been dried multiple times by now. The coat was basically made of the entire hide of the creature, making it rather sizable. Alex grabbed some grass from the ground and put it through some holes at the edge of the coat, creating a seam. After doing that a couple of times, the coat completely enveloped Alex's body, keeping him warm. Additionally, the coat did quite a good job at hiding his sword. At the front, the coat was a bit shorter to allow Alex to sprint without getting in the way. Alex tied his sword to his back with some makeshift rope made out of grass, hiding it behind his back and coat. Sadly, Alex wasn't good enough at sewing to create a permanent holding for his sword. If Alex wanted to use his sword, he would need to cut through the entire rope, which would require him to make a new one after that. Alex also put the holder of his backpack around his torso, making it rest to the left side of his thigh. Luckily, the strap was long enough. Alex had put the bag to his left because when he grabbed his sword, he would swing it to the right. The bag would only be in the way if it were on the right. In the end, Alex stood there completely cloaked in black. His unkempt and dirty black hair seemed to perfectly fit the coat he was wearing, making him appear like a mysterious wild man. If one saw him like this, one wouldn't think that he was technically still a minor. Then, Alex quickly stepped forward into the forest, his hands empty. Why didn't Alex carry his sword in his hands? 2 reasons. First of all, he wanted to hide it. Animals weren't stupid. If they saw a long black object in his hand, they would become wary of it. Second of all, if anyone attacked him from behind, his sword would be between them. However, since the sword was hidden, the attacker wouldn't know. If Alex got attacked from behind, the attacker might die very quickly since the sword would already be between their teeth. At that point, Alex would only need to move his sword in the attacker's mouth. Alex's sword was terrifyingly sharp, and he wouldn't need to use much power to kill his attacker. Alex had thought of everything while suiting up. He had to be careful in this forest. Alex jogged out of his area with quite some speed. Why? Because if he walked slowly, an ambusher would have more time to plan their ambush. Sure, Alex might be able to get by without being noticed if he walked slower, but an ambush would be that more devastating. Alex didn't bet on not being ambushed. Alex didn't see any other animals after silently jogging for nearly 10 minutes. However, he found some food. Chestnuts. Alex quickly stopped as he saw the chestnut tree and climbed it. For the next 30 minutes, Alex gathered chestnuts and ate a ton of them. Hope that's not the poisonous kind, Alex thought as he crunched down. It definitely didn't taste good. However, they at least tasted edible as far as he could tell. Well, worst case scenario, I just get a case of the runs, he thought. Grunt, grunt. Alex heard some grunting and looked at the origin of the sound. Some meters away from the tree was a sizable hog. It wasn't as big as the other one Alex saw, but it was still quite a bit heavier than a wolf. When Alex saw the hog, his eyes narrowed. I didn't attack the last hog since I didn't have a good weapon, but things have changed now, he thought. The hog was eyeing the tree warily. It had seen and heard Alex, since he hadn't been very stealthy. However, it didn't leave. This was its chestnut tree, and it had munched on the chestnuts quite a bit. Alex looked quite a bit bigger than he actually was, thanks to his black coat, which intimidated the hog a bit. Seeing a big black creature in a tree was quite terrifying. The black creature, Alex, slowly and silently moved around the branches on the tree with practiced ease, vanishing as he moved upwards. Crack, crack. A lot of the chestnuts got shaken off by his movement, dropping to the floor. Then some branches behind the chestnut tree moved. After that, some more rustling could be heard, but even further away. Had the creature left? The hog was uncertain. After some minutes of hesitating, the hog moved around the tree from a distance, trying to find the black creature. After several minutes of searching for the creature, the hog quickly took one of the chestnuts and retreated again. It quickly ate the chestnut and looked at its surroundings. This process repeated a couple of times until the hog was finally no longer nervous. The creature had left. Sage. Some silent rustling was heard from the tree above the hog, and it looked upward. Alex was falling down, his sword in both of his hands. His right hand held the handle while his left hand held the edge of the sword. Alex already knew that his sword couldn't injure himself for some reason. This meant that he could grab the sword like a staff. Alex fell down on the hog's neck like a guillotine. Bang! The sword was so insanely sharp that it cut through the entire neck of the fat hog with ease, creating the sound of an explosion as it hit the ground below the hog. The hog had died in an instant. Alex was sprayed with blood as his abdomen hit the severed head of the hog. Alex grimaced in disgust as he saw all the blood. I either need to wash this off, or I am going to get crusty and stinky quite quickly, he thought. The image of a decapitated pig sent some shivers down Alex's spine, but he knew that he had to get used to something like this. He would have to kill way more animals in the near future, and he might even need to kill humans when he rejoined their society. Alex wasn't so naive that he believed that a human society based on power would be a kind place. Alex looked at his kill for quite some time, just trying to take the scene in. The decapitated body of the pig bled like crazy, and it was still twitching. Meanwhile, the empty eyes of the decapitated pig head seemingly looked at Alex, asking him why he had killed it. Alex took a deep breath, instantly being assaulted by the rancid stench of fresh pig blood. However, Alex gnashed his teeth. The issue of food and water has been solved for now, Alex thought as he looked at the corpse. My sword is quite sharp, which should allow me to carve some tools out of wood, stuff like buckets and bowls. For now, I could drink distilled water made out of pig blood. It will be a bit disgusting and not super healthy, but that's not high up on my list of priorities. Let's get a fire going. The entire reason why Alex was supposed to grow powerful in a non-traditional way was entertainment. The god wanted to be entertained. So, obviously, the god wouldn't have chosen a boring person. Alex glanced at his left arm several times with a complex expression. His heart rate increased as he became more nervous. I need to try it, Alex thought with gritted teeth. With that, the decision had been made. Alex would damage the muscles in his left arm to such a degree that it would be considered an injury on Earth. This is going to hurt like hell, Alex thought with narrowed eyes. Splash! Alex left his tree and let himself fall onto the wet floor. Then he just stayed there for half a minute motionless. After half a minute, he turned to a different spot. This weird procedure continued for nearly half an hour. Half an hour later, Alex felt incredibly cold. His teeth were chattering as the sensations of his body became numb. Alex slowly turned over, and then he violently pushed with his left arm using all his strength. Alex had decided to lower the temperature of his body and go all out without warming up. He would train his left arm with all his power immediately. No sane person would do this on Earth. Why? Because it was way harder for muscles to stay flexible while they were cold. If the muscle fibers weren't flexible, they would tear away quicker and in greater quantity. It didn't even take a full minute for Alex's technique to show results. A burning sting of pain shot through Alex's left biceps as it violently cramped up. However, Alex was used to cramps, and he managed to continue pushing his left arm far past its limits. Just a minute later, Alex had to stop as he held his left arm in severe pain. He had probably torn a huge part of his left biceps. Yet, Alex wasn't done. A mad glint appeared in Alex's eyes as he wanted to go even further. Bang! 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 Alex balled his right hand into a fist and violently beat up his left biceps. 10 seconds later, Alex stopped as he only gasped for air. Alex knew exactly how long something like this would take to heal on Earth. Something like this would probably take 4 to 6 weeks to heal on Earth. I hope it doesn't take that long to heal here because the pain is driving me crazy. Alex held his left biceps as he walked over to his tree. Then he sat down and tried to meditate. It was far harder to enter meditation since he was in severe pain. But after an hour, he managed to connect with the mana again. Alex felt his left biceps cool down from the hot pain, and the pain also slowly receded into the background. However, the pain was still there. Alex concentrated on the mana and the air until he no longer felt the warm sensation on his left biceps. Then he opened his eyes and moved his left arm. As Alex saw the result, another complex mix of emotions appeared in his mind. Disbelief, exhilaration, fear. Why disbelief? Because his biceps had fully healed. Why exhilaration? Because this meant that Alex could gain power at a terrifying rate. Why fear? Because this meant that Alex had to go through an insane amount of pain. Alex knew exactly what this meant. Training would transform from an enjoyable exercise into pure torture. There would be no more fun in training. Training would be full of pain, nothing else. Alex knew that he could still continue training normally. Like this, he would still enjoy the process while growing more powerful. Yet, Alex also knew that this choice wasn't really a choice. Now that Alex had been in this world for over a day, an urge had appeared inside of him. Alex had seen several creatures that could kill him easily. Alex didn't want to die. Additionally, the god had said that Alex could reach insane amounts of power. On Earth, physical power was useful for staying healthy and earning money. But here everything revolved around it. Intelligence wasn't the most important thing. Connections weren't the most important thing. Money wasn't the most important thing. Influence wasn't the most important thing. Power was. Alex had seen the god's power when he had summoned the previous mage emperor and when he had changed the very reality in his hall. It didn't matter how many people attacked him. It didn't matter what weapons everyone used. In front of this god, all of these things became useless. Alex knew that there was a possibility that he could become just as powerful as the god. What would that mean? Freedom. Power. Everything that he wanted. Nothing in the entire world would be able to stop him. He'd do whatever he wanted without any repercussions and without any worries. Today Alex had truly awakened his undying thirst for power. He had to become powerful. Nothing was more important than power. Nothing. After steeling his resolve, Alex climbed up his tree. After he reached a height of a couple of meters, Alex gritted his teeth. Then he jumped down. As long as his bones didn't break, everything would be fine. Bang! It has been 3 days since Alex had started training his body, and he had made quite a lot of progress. The masochistic training had been hard to handle in the beginning, but Alex slowly got used to it after literally jumping over his shadow multiple times. After the first couple of jumps, Alex didn't want to feel any more pain. It was just too much. However, after he saw a visible improvement in his strength, he forced himself to continue. The taste of power was just too enticing. However, on this day, he would have to abort his training. Alex had run out of water, and the beast he had killed had started to get infested by insects. Due to the cold climate, the meat was still edible, but the insects inside the corpse were simply too disgusting. On top of that, the smell of the beast was slowly vanishing, and Alex had already seen a deer coming into his visual range before it fled after seeing him. 3 days ago, no animals had appeared close to this place. This meant that Alex was no longer safe. Thunk, thunk. Alex jumped to the tree and shot himself upward again with his legs, grabbing the lowest branch. 3 days ago, Alex wouldn't have been able to do something like this. The growth of his physical power was terrifying. Right now, Alex's body was even more powerful than his old body had been at its peak. Mana made a huge difference in the speed of Alex's improvement. Alex quickly climbed the tree and looked around. There were so many animals in this forest, so there had to be some kind of water source. However, due to the trees, Alex couldn't see the ground from up here, making it difficult to spot any water source. Alex could only check for spots with fewer trees. Alex found a couple of them and decided to investigate. At the same time, Alex would also search for more food. Bang! Alex climbed down from the tree and jumped the last bit, not receiving an injury. Well, I guess it's time to investigate, Alex thought with a frown. This would be the first time he would truly leave this place, and he didn't know what would wait for him. He only hoped that similarly powerful creatures like that monster he had killed by luck were rare. Otherwise, he might die. Alex grabbed his dirty clothes, his backpack, and his sword. Lastly, he put a gigantic black coat around his body, hiding his sword. This coat was made of the creature's fur, and it had been dried multiple times by now. The coat was basically made of the entire hide of the creature, making it rather sizable. Alex grabbed some grass from the ground and put it through some holes at the edge of the coat, creating a seam. After doing that a couple of times, the coat completely enveloped Alex's body, keeping him warm. Additionally, the coat did quite a good job at hiding his sword. At the front, the coat was a bit shorter to allow Alex to sprint without getting in the way. Alex tied his sword to his back with some makeshift rope made out of grass, hiding it behind his back and coat. Sadly, Alex wasn't good enough at sewing to create a permanent holding for his sword. If Alex wanted to use his sword, he would need to cut through the entire rope, which would require him to make a new one after that. Alex also put the holder of his backpack around his torso, making it rest to the left side of his thigh. Luckily, the strap was long enough. Alex had put the bag to his left because when he grabbed his sword, he would swing it to the right. The bag would only be in the way if it were on the right. In the end, Alex stood there completely cloaked in black. His unkempt and dirty black hair seemed to perfectly fit the coat he was wearing, making him appear like a mysterious wild man. If one saw him like this, one wouldn't think that he was technically still a minor. Letter 1 for 3 letter 1 for 6 letter 1 for 5 letter 1 for F letter 1 for 9 0 letter 1 for 9 7 dot letter 1 6 5 letter 1 6 6 4 letter 1 for F. Then Alex quickly stepped forward into the forest, his hands empty. Why didn't Alex carry his sword in his hands? 2 reasons. First of all, he wanted to hide it. Animals weren't stupid. If they saw a long black object in his hand, they would become wary of it. Second of all, if anyone attacked him from behind, his sword would be between them. However, since the sword was hidden, the attacker wouldn't know. If Alex got attacked from behind, the attacker might die very quickly since the sword would already be between their teeth. At that point, Alex would only need to move his sword in the attacker's mouth. Alex's sword was terrifyingly sharp, and he wouldn't need to use much power to kill his attacker. Alex had thought of everything while suiting up. He had to be careful in this forest. Alex jogged out of his area with quite some speed. Why? Because if he walked slowly, an ambusher would have more time to plan their ambush. Sure, Alex might be able to get by without being noticed if he walked slower, but an ambush would be that more devastating. Alex didn't bet on not being ambushed. Alex didn't see any other animals after silently jogging for nearly 10 minutes. However, he found some food. Chestnuts. Alex quickly stopped as he saw the chestnut tree and climbed it. For the next 30 minutes, Alex gathered chestnuts and ate a ton of them. Hope that's not the poisonous kind, Alex thought as he crunched down. It definitely didn't taste good. However, they at least tasted edible as far as he could tell. Well, worst case scenario, I just get a case of the runs, he thought. Grunt, grunt. Alex heard some grunting and looked at the origin of the sound. Some meters away from the tree was a sizable hog. It wasn't as big as the other one Alex saw, but it was still quite a bit heavier than a wolf. When Alex saw the hog, his eyes narrowed. I didn't attack the last hog since I didn't have a good weapon, but things have changed now, he thought. The hog was eyeing the tree warily. It had seen and heard Alex, since he hadn't been very stealthy. However, it didn't leave. This was its chestnut tree, and it had munched on the chestnuts quite a bit. Alex looked quite a bit bigger than he actually was, thanks to his black coat, which intimidated the hog a bit. Seeing a big black creature in a tree was quite terrifying. The black creature, Alex, slowly and silently moved around the branches on the tree with practiced ease, vanishing as he moved upwards. Crack, crack. A lot of the chestnuts got shaken off by his movement, dropping to the floor. Then some branches behind the chestnut tree moved. After that, some more rustling could be heard, but even further away. Had the creature left? The hog was uncertain. After some minutes of hesitating, the hog moved around the tree from a distance, trying to find the black creature. After several minutes of searching for the creature, the hog quickly took one of the chestnuts and retreated again. It quickly ate the chestnut and looked at its surroundings. This process repeated a couple of times until the hog was finally no longer nervous. The creature had left. Sage. Some silent rustling was heard from the tree above the hog, and it looked upward. Alex was falling down, his sword in both of his hands. His right hand held the handle while his left hand held the edge of the sword. Alex already knew that his sword couldn't injure himself for some reason. This meant that he could grab the sword like a staff. Alex fell down on the hog's neck like a guillotine. Bang! The sword was so insanely sharp that it cut through the entire neck of the fat hog with ease, creating the sound of an explosion as it hit the ground below the hog. The hog had died in an instant. Alex was sprayed with blood as his abdomen hit the severed head of the hog. Alex grimaced in disgust as he saw all the blood. I either need to wash this off, or I am going to get crusty and stinky quite quickly, he thought. The image of a decapitated pig sent some shivers down Alex's spine, but he knew that he had to get used to something like this. He would have to kill way more animals in the near future, and he might even need to kill humans when he rejoined their society. Alex wasn't so naive that he believed that a human society based on power would be a kind place. Alex looked at his kill for quite some time, just trying to take the scene in. The decapitated body of the pig bled like crazy, and it was still twitching. Meanwhile, the empty eyes of the decapitated pig head seemingly looked at Alex, asking him why he had killed it. Alex took a deep breath, instantly being assaulted by the rancid stench of fresh pig blood. However, Alex gnashed his teeth. The issue of food and water has been solved for now, Alex thought as he looked at the corpse. My sword is quite sharp, which should allow me to carve some tools out of wood, stuff like buckets and bowls. For now, I could drink distilled water made out of pig blood. It will be a bit disgusting and not super healthy, but that's not high up on my list of priorities. Let's get a fire going. Crackle. A fire was burning as several pieces of meat hung around it. In the middle above the fire hung a bucket. Alex had felled an entire tree with his sword and had hollowed out a big part of its trunk, creating his bucket. Then Alex had felled an even bigger tree, creating 2 round bowls. The sharpness of Alex's sword was what allowed him to achieve this feat. Alex had filled the bucket with pig blood and hung it above the fire. Alex put one of the bowls over the bucket and put a long branch on it, which led to the side. The bowl would catch the evaporating water, and when enough water gathered, it would trickle down to the lowest edge of the bowl where the branch was. The branch led the trickling water to the side, to a different bowl. This was how Alex would solve the issue of water. Sadly, this would be distilled water, and he also couldn't wash his tools since he didn't have any water to begin with. The water in the other bucket didn't look refreshing or delicious, but it was water. Strewn around the clearing were the remaining parts of the hog. Alex couldn't finish the entire thing on his own, even if he ate for several days, and the meat would go bad anyway. So Alex decided to cut the pig apart and scattered the pieces around the clearing. Why? To ward off predators. Sure, the smell of blood would gather many of them, but predators were also just animals. If they could get food for free, they wouldn't want to fight. If a predator came to the clearing, they would see a black creature of unknown size, thanks to the coat, sitting beside a hot fire. Every normal predator would grab one of the pieces of the hog and would run away, leaving Alex alone. While Alex's food and water were being prepared, Alex decided to get some more training in. Alex put his coat away and climbed the tree. Boom! As Alex hit the ground, a loud slam echoed throughout the forest. This sound would also deter any animal from coming to the spot. After all, only something big and powerful could make such loud sounds. After 3 jumps, Alex heard some rustling. His entire body hurt, but all of the pain was forgotten as he realized something else was close. In the light of the fire, Alex could see 2 eyes in the dark. They weren't very high up, and the animal was looking at Alex warily. However, it didn't look at Alex with fear. It was more like an evaluating expression. Alex looked back. After a bit, Alex could see the owner of the eyes. It was the green lizard that had killed 2 of the 4 wolves. After a bit, the lizard bit down on one of the pieces of meat and fled. When Alex saw the lizard retreating, he amended his plans. Alex grabbed his coat and put it around himself before he continued training. Why? Because the lizard had the ability to shoot fireballs. If one beast could shoot fireballs, it was possible that other beasts could do the same. However, the coat of the creature should offer some protection. Even if it caught fire, Alex could always ditch it. Alex's masochistic training continued, and after a couple of jumps, Alex concentrated on healing himself with mana. Alex always looked forward to this part of his training since this was the part that increased his power. On top of that, it wasn't as painful as the other part. Thunk, thunk. Alex heard rhythmic, loud sounds. Alex looked in the direction of the sounds but couldn't see anything. They came from too far away. What's making that sound? Alex thought. Thunk, thunk. The sounds continued and Alex only looked in that direction. Spring, spring. The sound of something elastic being stretched and snapping back into place could also be heard. Yea, creak, creak, snap, snap. The sounds of bending and cracking wood joined in the cacophony of sounds, and the sounds were getting louder. Alex's eyes widened. Something big was coming. Alex immediately abandoned everything and climbed the closest tree. When he found a good spot, he stopped moving and grew silent. The sounds continued and grew even louder. Snap! Eventually, Alex saw what created these weird sounds, and his eyes widened. It was an absolutely humongous beast. It was probably 4 meters high, excluding its needles. Needles? Yes, this was the green hedgehog Alex had seen when he had arrived in this world. The loud thumping sounds were its footsteps. The creaking sounds of wood were its flexible needles getting hung up on the trees. The snapping sounds were its flexible needles jumping back into place after passing a tree. The forest and trees seemingly moved with the hedgehog as it bent all of the trees while passing. It was moving slowly and in a relaxed manner towards the place Alex had stayed. Then it slowly bent down as it consumed a huge part of the hog. I totally forgot. Even though hedgehogs are cute, they're also technically omnivores. They eat a ton of insects. A hedgehog of that size obviously also eats meat. Alex thought as he remained completely silent. This monster was far above his ability. The creature Alex had killed by luck was nothing in comparison to this hedgehog. As the hedgehog came closer, it ate all the pieces of the pig, including the ones that were being cooked. After it reached the fire, it stopped above it. Alex was confused for a second, but he realized what the hedgehog was doing. It was warming its belly. The sizzling fire directly below its belly didn't even bother the hedgehog. This was an absolute monster. Alex kept his breath as he watched the hedgehog warm itself. Thunk. Apparently, the fire wasn't warm enough, so it lowered its belly and lied down. Sadly, this suffocated the fire. After some seconds, the hedgehog stood up again, displeased. It scratched the fire with his hind leg in displeasure but continued eating. Well, there goes food, Alex thought. After the hedgehog was done, it turned its head slowly, and it directly looked into Alex's eyes. Alex's entire body shivered as he realized that the hedgehog had known where he was the entire time. Otherwise, its gaze wouldn't have homed in on him with such accuracy. Alex didn't dare to move. Creak, creak, creak. The humongous body of the hedgehog slowly shook as its needles swayed back and forth. Flonk, flonk, flonk. Some things fell off the hedgehog's needles. Alex still didn't dare to move. After the hedgehog shook itself a little bit, it continued walking. After the hedgehog was a couple meters away, Alex jumped down from the tree and looked at his campsite. The hedgehog already knew that he was there, so it made no sense to keep hiding. Everything was destroyed. All the meat was gone, the fire was out, and the water was spilled. Nothing had been spared. Alex had to sigh when he saw that. However, Alex's eyes spied something new in the clearing. It was a round object, but Alex couldn't see it clearly in the dark. Alex walked closer and inspected it. Is that a fruit? Alex thought with surprise. Where did that come from? Alex remembered how the hedgehog had shaken itself, and that he had heard several sounds of things falling to the ground. Did these things come from the hedgehog's needles? Since when do hedgehogs grow fruit? Alex thought. Alex looked at the hedgehog in the distance, and sure enough, after looking closer, Alex saw some round objects on the hedgehog's needles. They shone a bit under the moonlight. Alex remembered how the hedgehog had eaten everything, had looked at him, and had then shaken its body. Is this a kind of trade? Alex thought with surprise. Is it familiar with humans? Could it be possible that it gives humans fruits in exchange for meat? I mean, the hedgehog is big and cumbersome. Everything probably flees from it, making it surprisingly hard for it to hunt. Alex gathered the fruits, but before he got to the last one, something happened. The loud sound of hissing came from Alex's front, and he jumped back out of reflex. Snap! The animal quickly grabbed the fruit, turned around, and fled into the distance. It was that lizard again. It had intimidated Alex and took that opportunity to run with one of the fruits. However, Alex's eyebrows furrowed as he scratched his chin and thought. It could have launched a fireball at me, but it didn't. Instead, it hissed at me, grabbed the fruit, and ran. It's probably wary of my power, but the fruit was enticing enough for it to take the risk, Alex thought. Alex looked at the fruits with more interest. Anything coming from such a fearsome beast couldn't be simple. It's a risk, but I think it's worth trying to eat the fruits. Alex climbed a tree and ate one of the fruits. As soon as he swallowed the first bite, something happened. A burning pain shot throughout Alex's body. Alex's entire body seemingly started burning, but this was only an illusion created by the fruit. As soon as Alex swallowed the first bite, he felt like his muscles started to catch on fire. Yet for some reason, this sensation wasn't exactly painful. It had some painful aspects to it, but a certain feeling of excitement, restlessness, and energy came with it. Alex had never tried steroids in his past life since that would ruin his career, but he imagined that steroids felt similar, minus the slight pain. After some seconds, Alex noticed something. This feels very similar to absorbing mana, just way more intense, he thought with excitement. Due to the intensity of the experience, Alex also noticed something else. Alex looked at his body and touched his head. I haven't noticed it before since the mana always felt gentle, but my head actually doesn't feel any of the mana. My entire body feels like it's heating up, but my head remains cool. It's almost like my head isn't affected by the mana. Alex frowned. The god told me that I would be unable to practice magic. Is that what he meant? Logically, mages should get their abilities to cast spells by increasing the power of their soul and mind. At least, that's how it always worked in RPGs. I guess it works similarly here. After all, these kinds of people are called mages, and they harness the power of the environment to create powerful attacks. The god said that mana is the main reason how people could become so powerful in his world, which means that all the power of people hinges on the usage of mana. There should be something in my body that allows me to absorb and control mana. I guess mages probably absorb the mana with their souls and minds, leaving their bodies weak. There has to be some drawback to an advantage. Otherwise, it wouldn't be entertaining. I mean, wasn't this the entire reason why the god made his world like this, and why I'm here? So, in essence, mages probably don't absorb mana with their bodies, but with their mind. If a mage ate this fruit, they would probably feel this sensation only in their head, while I feel it across my body. The thing that stores and distributes the mana across my body probably has no connection to my head, making it impossible for mana to reach it. That's probably also why all the mana gets dumped into my body since it has nowhere else to go. What am I doing? Alex thought as he gritted his teeth. I'm currently filled to the brim with mana, but I'm thinking about such stuff that's so far in the future. Get a grip, Allard Shang. Alex immediately shot up and climbed higher on the tree. Then he jumped with all his power and readied himself for a huge impact. Bang! Alex felt pain shoot throughout his arms and knees as he hit the ground. Then he quickly stood up and ran to the tree again. As Alex climbed up the tree again, he noticed something else, which made him narrow his eyes with a gleam. My legs and arms don't hurt anymore. This means that I don't need to rest. I have to use this opportunity. Alex climbed higher than usual and looked down. It was so high. However, the burning sensation pushed him over the edge, and he jumped. Alex never had had a good opportunity to see if the mana's regenerating properties also worked on his bones. Logically, it should, but Alex wasn't sure of the extent. Alex felt like time stopped as he fell towards the ground. Crack! And Alex got his wish. Alex didn't want to experiment with his legs since they were more important than his arms. Because of that, Alex had initially landed on his feet, but had then fallen forward to transmit the force of the fall onto his right arm. Alex's right forearm broke apart. Alex gritted his teeth violently as an incredible pain shot throughout his arm. Breaking a bone was never easy. Alex touched his right forearm with his left hand and felt the bone sticking out. Great, an open fracture, he thought. Alex quickly felt a change in his body. The hot sensation seemingly got weaker all over his body and focused on his right forearm. CRK! CRK! Creaking sounds could be heard as the bone in Alex's right forearm seemingly moved back into place. Splotch! The sound of moving flesh and blood had a unique feeling to it, but Alex only focused on his arm. The bone had been buried back into his arm, and the broken skin and flesh above it started to heal with speed visible to the naked eye. 2 minutes later, the hot sensation completely left Alex's body. Alex touched his right arm and felt a stinging pain. Not fully healed yet, but all the mana has been used up, he thought. Apparently, mana also accelerates the recovery of my bones, but the mana required is incomparable. According to the intensity of the sensation, This one bite of the fruit probably gave me more mana than I could get in several hours of meditation. The same amount of mana could have healed my entire body twice. Alex looked at his right arm with shining eyes. However, if mana can strengthen my muscles, it can probably also strengthen my bones, he concluded. If my strength ever reaches a level that just using my muscles would break my own bones, it would be truly tragic. I can't make such a stupid mistake. Alex gritted his teeth. My training is about to become even more painful. I fucking hate that. Why does training have to be so fucking painful? Alex ran to the tree and grabbed the fruit. Alex had been careful with his first bite, which was why the bite had been relatively small. There was still a ton left. Alex took a big bite and climbed the tree. An even more powerful sensation engulfed his body as he jumped down again. Crack! More broken bones. But this time, Alex had enough mana inside his body to heal everything. It only took half a minute for everything to heal again. Crack! The process repeated itself, and Alex took another bite of the fruit. Crack! 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 About 15 minutes later, the fruit was completely used up and Alex grabbed the next one. However, he hesitated as he gritted his teeth. He wished that he had never come up with that terrifying thought. What thought? Well, what if he got more powerful and got punched in the gut? Would his organs be able to resist the force? Logically, no, but there had to be a way to fix such a glaring issue. After all, the god had said that there had been innumerable paths to power in the past. He refused to believe that they were all weak to body blows. I can't stop now. Crunch, crunch. Alex ate the entire fruit at once, and he felt like his body was about to explode. There was so much mana. It was no longer a gentle situation. No, Alex felt like his body was literally being incinerated. Later 1 day 4 b later 1 day 4 a later 1 d 4 b 9 later 1 day 4 a 7 later 2 1 3 4 later 1 day 4 f f later 2 1 2 f dot later 1 day 4 e later 2 1 3 4 later 1 day 4 f 6. Alex climbed up but hesitated. This was very different from all his previous jumps. If he misjudged this jump, he would actually die. However, Alex had already burned the bridge. There was no way back. If he didn't manage to find an outlet for all this mana, he would probably die. So, Alex jumped forward and protected his head with his arms. Then he hit the ground, chest and abdomen first. Meanwhile, the god was watching Alex with a mad grin. Yes, that was exactly why he had chosen him. This kind of insanity was why he had chosen Shang. Alex felt an impact. It was like he had been hit by a speeding car. Alex couldn't even discern all the different sounds that reverberated throughout his body. He heard and felt several cracking noises, quickly followed by the sounds of rupturing flesh. Alex couldn't breathe. Erg. Alex puked and coughed violently as he spat blood out of his mouth. I can't breathe. Alex coughed violently as more and more blood came out of his body. It felt like there was water in his lungs, and he desperately wanted to get some air, but only a disgusting gurgling sound came out of his mouth. CRK! CRK! Alex turned over to his side as he curled up like a shrimp. The sounds of cracking bone rang throughout his body as they quickly snapped back to their original place. 30 seconds of absolute agony and panic passed. Herg. Alex puked up a huge mass of blood, and he took a deep breath. The panic slowly subsided as Alex gulped in a ton of air. Then he simply sat down. This was way worse than he had imagined. How was anyone supposed to do that multiple times? Alex only lay on the ground, trying to hold back his tears. This was torture. However, the burning of the mana intensified again. Alex had eaten an entire fruit, and one jump wasn't enough. Alex's mind fell into disarray as he couldn't make a decision. I don't want to anymore, he shouted to himself. However, as he felt the mana become even more intense, he stood up and climbed the tree again with shaking and fidgety limbs. Alex didn't want to, but he jumped again. This time, he landed on his back. Crack! Alex had protected his head, but his spine broke apart. Another 30 breathless seconds of panic and pain passed. Alex's body shook as he lay on the ground. He didn't want to anymore. It was so painful. Alex wished that he was back on Earth, but that wish couldn't come true. He didn't want to do this. However, the burning sensation of the mana intensified again as his body fully regenerated. Alex slowly sat up as he slowly walked over to the tree. He had to hold back his tears. However, he climbed up the tree again, this time higher than before. It was time for his legs. Alex climbed all the way to the top. His entire body shook, but he jumped. Alex fell for several seconds. Crack! Alex's legs shattered as his kneecaps shot out of his body, one of them hitting a tree and another one sliding on the ground. Some of the bones in Alex's torso also broke, but he managed to barely stay alive. This time it was easier since his lungs hadn't been damaged too much. The worst thing had always been the inability to breathe. The inability to breathe brought a sense of existential dread to him. This dread was far worse than the pain. This time the intensity of the mana didn't increase again. He had used up enough mana. For a while Alex only lied on the ground, not moving. He didn't think about anything. He only lied there and paused. Several minutes passed, and the sensations Alex had felt in the past half an hour shot through his mind. It was like he was trying to come to terms with what he had just felt. It was so very different from his life on Earth. Sure, he had gone through tough training on Earth, but this wasn't training. This was torture. Silence. For a while, Alex only listened to the silence of the forest. Why am I doing this to myself? Silence. Is this really the best way? Silence. I don't know. Alex looked over to the tree. 2 fruits are left. Silence. Should I? Silence. Swish. Alex's eyes suddenly snapped open as he heard the sound of moving foliage. CRSH. Alex gritted his teeth violently as blood exploded out of his arm. A panther. Alex had utterly forgotten that he wasn't in some safe location. He was in a forest filled with violent animals and creatures. Alex had lied on his back, and the panther had wanted to bite his neck. Luckily, Alex had barely managed to block the bite with his left arm. The panther bit down on Alex's forearm, destroying the muscles. Yet, surprisingly, Alex's bone didn't break. The panther was violently trying to scratch him with its claws, and several wounds appeared all over Alex's body as his hand went to his back. But there was nothing on his back. Alex realized that he had taken off his sword when he had decided to land on his back. Fuck. The panther let go of Alex's arm and jumped back. However, Alex grabbed the panther's neck with his right hand. Whoosh! The panther jumped back, but Alex was pulled along. Judging by the distance, the panther was stronger than the panthers on Earth. After all, it had just jumped back 2 meters while pulling Alex with it. However, the panther wasn't the only thing stronger than the Earth variant. Alex had managed to keep hold of the panther's neck all this time with only one hand, which surprised him. He was sure that he hadn't been able to do that a couple of days ago. The panther tried to get rid of Alex and attacked him with its claws, but Alex's instincts kicked in. Alex immediately pulled himself closer and hugged the panther's neck with his arms and its torso with his legs. The panther tried to get rid of Alex and cut him a couple more times, but Alex didn't let go. The panther shouted aggressively, trying to get Alex away from him, but as Alex's legs tightened even more, its aggressive shout transformed into a whimper. Alex felt how his legs squished the panther's organs and muscles as its bones started to creak. Alex's eyes opened with surprise. Bang! Crack! Alex pulled his right arm back and punched the panther's chest, which quickly caved in. The panther stopped moving, and Alex quickly took hold of its head and neck. Crack! And the panther was dead. Alex breathed in several times as the adrenaline slowly subsided. Then he looked at his body. Have I done that? He thought in shock. This panther was not small, and its power was no joke. Yet the panther hadn't been able to break Alex's bones, and Alex had broken its bones just by punching. The difference in power was apparent. For some time, Alex only looked at the panther with shock. Something like this was only possible in a dream. How could a human kill a big cat with bare hands, and with such ease at that? After a while, Alex looked at his right hand as he clenched it into a fist. Then his eyes narrowed. It's not for nothing. My past few days of pain have shown that they are not for nothing. Alex's gaze immediately went to the last 2 fruits. Then he walked over with determination and ate another one. The pain, panic, and torture were horrible, but the feeling of seeing his own power increase by so much had washed all of these things away. He wanted more. A month had passed since Alex arrived in this world. For the first couple of days, Alex focused on finding a steady water source and scouted for places with fruit, berries, and nuts. He didn't know if this world followed the rules of needing different vitamins and minerals to be healthy, but he didn't want to find out while being in the wild. After a couple of days, Alex found a river going through the valley's center, splitting the mountain range surrounding the valley in 2. In the very center of the valley was a lake where the water gathered for a while before continuing down the river. Alex had found a humongous dead tree there and planned to create a home for himself. Alex had already used up all the fruits he had received from the hedgehog in a spree of self-destroying insanity. Luckily, he had gotten somewhat used to the torturous training, even if he still feared it. Courage didn't mean being fearless, but being able to overcome one's fears. Alex still feared the time when he would gain another set of fruits, but he knew that he could jump over his shadow when it was time. The taste of power was irresistible for Alex. Even if the training was horrible and inhumane, the power he gained from it was worth it in his mind. Alex used his desire for power as fuel to overcome his fear of pain. Was something like that healthy? That depended on one's circumstances and viewpoints. Would such pain change a person? Definitely. However, different people change differently when undergoing such torture. How would Alex change? That remained to be seen. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Alex stood in a clearing, constantly swinging his sword. Letter 1D, 6 to 3 letter 1D, 6 to 6 letter 1D, 6 to 5 letter 1D, 6 to F letter 1D, 6, 30 letter 1D, 4 6, 3 dot letter 1D, 6, 30 letter 1D, 6, 3 letter 1D, 6 to 8. After a brief run-in with another set of wolves, Alex had realized that he wasn't very good at using his sword. Alex had always only fought with his body for his entire life, never with a true weapon. This made him very unaccustomed to fighting with an actual weapon. Following that fight, Alex had decided to train with his sword more, and just shortly after training with his sword, Alex noticed something troublesome. His triceps and back started to hurt quite quickly. Alex had trained his entire body, but training everything equally was not always the correct choice. A good example would be a climber. If someone had bulky legs, a bulky abdomen, and a bulky back, they would increase the strain on their hands and arms due to the added weight of muscles. In that case, training everything equally would not only not help, but even be detrimental to performance. What about a sword fighter? Bulkiness would increase the mass and volume of the body, slowing down the speed of the fighter. Even more, if the muscles on the torso reached a certain mass, they would even restrict the movement of the arms. One only had to look at the videos of bulky men being unable to touch their backs. However, with all of that said, a certain amount of power was still necessary across the entire body. Every muscle would be required in a fight. They were just used with different intensity. Because of all these reasons, Alex decided to mainly train with his sword. He would only give his entire body a workout after every 3rd session of sword training. Training with a sword was not any less strenuous than training one's entire body. It simply trained different muscle groups. After every session of training with the sword, Alex felt a huge part of his body burn with pain. On Earth, someone would have long since stopped training since overtraining was just as bad as undertraining. But here, there was no overtraining. After Alex was done with his training, he jumped up a nearby tree and sat down in meditation. Alex had been training like a madman, and it was showing incredible results. He no longer needed to climb a tree. With one jump, he could easily jump 2 meters into the air, even with the heavy sword on his back. Alex had already broken the physical limit of humans on Earth. This was the effect of mana. Some minutes later, Alex jumped down from the tree and walked to the edge of the clearing. In front of Alex was a huge tree with a hole in the middle. The tree was nearly 3 meters wide, but it wasn't the tallest tree. After all, it was already dead, and the cold wind had destroyed the upper part of its trunk. Besides the hole in the tree were several pieces of wood arranged in the shape of a big doorframe. This wasn't a doorframe, but Alex's future hut. Every day, Alex would cut more wood and add to the wood. In a couple of days, he would have his very own tiny hut. Alex used stone for nails, but it was a difficult process to get them into the wooden boards. After all, stone was hard but brittle. If he just hammered the nails in, they would break. Because of that, Alex had to cut out the holes with his sword and carefully insert the stone. This made the structure very unstable and wonky, but it held up for now. As long as nothing touched the structure, and as long as the wind wasn't too strong, the structure would hold. Alex went to a bench near the structure and grabbed his clothes. His old clothes had long since been ripped to pieces, including his spare clothes. His new clothes were made of wolf fur. One would think that such clothing looked wild and powerful, but in reality, it looked poor and pitiful. However, this set of clothing was already far superior to the previous ones. After all, Alex had gotten better at sewing. Who would have thought that one of the essential skills of surviving in the cold wilds was sewing? If Alex were in a tropical climate, he wouldn't have to bother that much with sewing. He would only need to remain in the shade most of the time, and if he walked around, he would only need to protect himself from the sun. A blanket wasn't nearly as hard to make as actual clothing. After putting on his clothes, Alex grabbed his cloak and put it around his shoulders. Alex performed a couple of jumps to test if his movement would be impaired by the new set of clothing and realized that it wouldn't. Alex looked at the dimming sky. He couldn't see the sun, but he wouldn't be able to see the sun anyway, even if it were midday. Why? Because the sky was covered in oppressive, cold, gray clouds. It had already snowed a couple of days ago, and Alex noticed that the weather was getting colder. The winter would soon be here. This was a major problem for Alex since warmth would be of primary importance. He even guessed that temperatures might even reach -20 to -40 degrees Celsius at the peak of winter. Even if Alex had an incredibly powerful body now, he knew that he couldn't survive such temperatures. This was why Alex concentrated on becoming better at sewing and making a hut. However, there was one major problem standing in his way. Dusk soon arrived, and Alex's eyes narrowed as he checked his equipment again. Alex touched his sword to comfort himself and released a sigh as he closed his eyes. Some seconds later, Alex opened his eyes with a determined look. "You've crept around my camp for long enough. Sleeping has become difficult with you around, and I am sure that you will strike soon. My hut and clothing are in danger as long as you are around. If you destroy my hut, I might not find the time to create a new one in time." Alex only considered his hut and clothing, completely ignoring his own physical safety. Alex slowly walked forward as darkness took hold of the forest. There were no stars, no moon. There were only dark clouds above Alex as all the light vanished in the forest. However, Alex was no longer a normal human. The mana had not only increased the power of Alex's body, but also the sensitivity of his senses. Alex's 5 senses had become several times sharper, to the point that Alex could even see a couple of meters in front of him in this total darkness. Alex didn't know how the mana had been able to increase the power of his eyes. After all, the mana couldn't even reach his head for some reason. Yet it was undeniable that the sensitivity of his eyes had increased tremendously. Alex walked forward away from the hut. He didn't want to put his hut in danger. As Alex walked forward in total darkness, he noticed some snowflakes falling from the clouds. Alex could still see the white on the snowflakes, even though there was basically no light in the forest anymore. He only saw small, white crystals of snow slowly falling to the ground with a backdrop of absolute darkness. "Sage!" Alex heard an incredibly silent rustling of leaves, and he gazed over. It was here. Alex saw some white eyes looking at him from the top of a distant tree. These were familiar eyes. Alex touched his coat, which looked identical to the creature's fur. Alex had named these creatures stalkers. This kind of creature had nearly killed him a month ago, and Alex had only won by sheer luck. This time things would be different. Alex looked at the stalker and the stalker looked back. Silence. Only the cold wind could be heard. Alex slowly retrieved his sword and held it in his right hand. He no longer needed to carry it with both of his hands. Step. Then Alex slowly stepped forward. The stalker looked at him from a distance, silently evaluating him. In its mind, this animal was small, far smaller than it. It had seen these kinds of animals before, and they always hunted in groups. Yet this one was alone. From what the stalker had seen, these animals weren't very powerful. They could only be a real danger in a group. They were slow. Their bodies were weak. Yet, this particular specimen felt different to the stalker. More dangerous. However, the more dangerous the specimen felt, the better its meat would taste. Such creatures as the stalkers were drawn to powerful prey. The more powerful the prey, the better. On Earth, predators avoided dangerous prey unless they were really desperate. But here things were different. The more powerful something was, the more mana it had stored in its body. After all, physical power without mana took a being only so far. At some point, mana was necessary to become more powerful. Because of that, the predators that took more risks and survived had become more powerful and had fathered more offspring. After many, many years, every animal and creature in this world had the instinct of hunting powerful prey. This was also why the wolves hadn't retreated when they had been attacked by the lizard. The lizard had killed 2 of the 4 wolves, but the remaining 2 wolves had still charged at it in a frenzy. This was how powerful the draw of power was for the creatures and animals of this world. Alex slowly walked closer as he kept his sword ready, never taking his eyes off the creature. This was no longer the same Alex that had appeared in this world. The old Alex had thought about many things. Family, love, success, money, justice. However, all of these desires had been replaced with a thirst for power. People changed over the course of their life, but with such a drastic change in attitude and personality in only a single month normal? Could he still be considered as Alex? Or had he already become Shang? Alex didn't think about these things, but he had long decided that he would only walk forward, never looking backward. The old world of Alex was slowly left behind as he walked into the darkness before him. How long would it take until Alex looked back? Would he have already walked so far that he couldn't see his starting point anymore? If that happened, Alex would have nothing left to orient himself on. Then, he would only walk forward blindly in the darkness in a random direction. Chances were that he would end up walking in a direction the old Alex would have never chosen. Step. Alex arrived below the tree, and the stalker was still looking at him. It was still debating if it should attack him or not. Dangerous prey tasted incredibly delicious, but if the prey was too dangerous, the stalker would die. Right now, this being in front of the creature felt very dangerous. Should it attack? Bang! Alex jumped upward and swung with his sword at the stalker. The stalker immediately jumped back. Shing! The huge branch the stalker had just been on was easily cut in 2. Shing! CRK! Alex swung his sword to the left, burying it horizontally in the trunk of the tree. The sword got stuck and Alex used it to reposition his body, putting his feet on the trunk. Bang! Alex shot away from the tree, pulling his sword out while doing so. The first stalker had used a similar move back then. Fight or not fight, the choice had been taken from the stalker. Alex flew at the stalker as it just landed on another branch. Shing! Another branch was cut apart as the stalker quickly moved along the tree towards the ground. Crack! The stalker barely evaded another attack as Alex's sword cut through 2/3 of the tree's massive trunk. Bang! Alex shot towards the ground at the stalker. Boom! Alex hit the ground, his sword creating a cut in the earth. The sound of Alex hitting the ground thundered throughout the forest. The stalker immediately made its decision. Run! Too dangerous. It turned around and ran into the distance. Bang! Alex chased after it with explosive power. However, the stalker was faster than Alex. Alex made a split-second decision. Shing! Something seemingly passed the stalker and hit the tree in front of it. The stalker looked over and saw the dangerous weapon of the human being stuck in a tree. The stalker stopped. It wasn't dumb. It knew that these kinds of beings needed to use these sharp things. Maybe it could win? The stalker turned around to look at Alex. It had made its decision. It would kill this human. The human had lost his most powerful weapon. Hunger and greed took over the stalker's mind as it saw Alex. Bang! However, just when the stalker saw Alex, it was already too late. Alex hadn't stopped running, and the short moment of hesitation of the stalker had given him enough time to catch up with it. Alex had reached the stalker and hit it to the side of the head with an elbow. The stalker was stunned for a bit and Alex jumped on its back. Then he grabbed its chest from behind, put his arms through its armpit, and clamped his hands together on the stalker's neck. It was a full Nelson. It sounded ridiculous. Alex was using an MMA move on a gigantic, cat-like creature in a dark forest. However, it was the best and most effective move. The thin, stealthy, and fast frame of the stalker had become its undoing. If it were bulkier, Alex couldn't have used that move. Even though Alex's weapon was now the sword, it didn't mean that he couldn't use other weapons as well. Alex was a trained MMA fighter, and as long as he had enough time to study his opponent's body, he could glean the body's weaknesses. Alex had deliberately thrown his sword forward in an attempt to bait the stalker into attacking him. It was risky, but Alex preferred a more dangerous, direct fight to a lurking danger. Who knew if the stalker decided to lurk around some more and strike when Alex didn't pay attention? He couldn't risk that. The stalker flopped to the ground as its forelegs moved to the side, out of its control. The stalker hissed in a threatening manner and jumped on its back with its hind legs. Alex fell to the ground with his back, the entire weight of the stalker pressing down on him. However, Alex was used to falling to the ground by now. Something like this couldn't stun him anymore. The stalker hissed, but hissing wasn't enough. Its limbs couldn't reach its back, and Alex's hands were pushing down on its neck, stopping it from turning its head and biting him. After some seconds, the stalker's hisses were replaced with screeches. CRK! 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 The stalker's body was powerful, even more powerful than Alex's body, but it couldn't use any strength in this position, while Alex could use the gathered power of his arms, chest, and back. Crack! The stalker's left shoulder broke, and Alex lost his grip due to the loss of resistance. Usually, breaking bone with a full Nelson wasn't feasible when professional fighters fought, but Alex's body had become powerful enough to pull something like that off. Alex let go and pushed the stalker away, throwing it to the side. When he had just come to this world, such a feat would have seemed impossible. Stalker quickly tried to get to its feet and scampered away. However, it couldn't get far and it slowed down speed. Shing! Alex had retrieved his sword and cut through the stalker's left thigh, severing its leg. Alex's sword was insanely sharp. The stalker fell over and Alex ran to its head. Shing! The fight was over. Alex calmed down as he looked at his kill. It was so much easier than he had anticipated. The stalker's power and speed were far superior to him. If the stalker had directly fought Alex, the fight would have been far more dangerous. It could have simply jumped around Alex, baiting him into striking with his sword. Then, if he made a mistake, it could have bit Alex's arm. Alex's arm had been able to survive the bite of a panther, but a stalker was on an entirely different level. Such a bite would have torn Alex's arm off. At that point, he could only wait for his death. The fight could have gone either way. Yet, it hadn't. From the very first moment of the fight, Alex had been in control. Their powers were about equal, but the stalker hadn't been able to use its power. Initiative and intimidation, Alex concluded as he looked at the corpse. My attacks made it lose its resolve. From the very beginning, it believed that it couldn't win, and its lack of conviction made it unable to properly fight. Alex's eyes narrowed. I learned a valuable lesson today. If I don't remember this lesson, I might be in the same place as the stalker in the future. I must always fight with my life on the line or flee without looking back when I'm faster. It doesn't matter what I choose, but when I make my choice, I have to put my all into it without any second thoughts. Alex put his sword away and grabbed the severed leg. After that, Alex grabbed one of the legs of the stalker and pulled it. Sage! The sound of something heavy being dragged along the ground could be heard in the forest tonight. Alex had killed many animals in the past month. However, today he had killed his first creature.